Design Board for October 10th, 2022. May I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller, please.
Here.
Vice Chair Kalas. Here. Board Member Anderson.
Here.
Board Member Keeling.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to item A, any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone that would like to speak or email or?
There's no one on Zoom who'd like to make a general comment, and no one in the room, so we can go ahead and close public comment for general.
All right, thank you. So let's move on to item B, approval of the minutes for the Single Family Design Board meeting for September 26, 2022. May we go through those items, please?
Yes. Item 1, 102 Jorgensen Lane was continued indefinitely to consent review with comments. Item 2, 214 Salida del Sol received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent review for final approval with comments. Item 3, 2501 Medcliff Road was continued indefinitely to the full board for further conceptual review with the following comments. That concludes the meeting minutes.
Okay, hearing no comments or changes, may I have a motion for approval, please? Someone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Klaus,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Keeling.
Yes.
Yeah, and motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar for September 26. May I have can we go through those items, please?
Yes. Item A, 116 Santa Cruz Boulevard. Received approval of review after final with the comment that the project plans demonstrate substantial conformance to the plans that received project design approval and final approval dates noted. Item B, 154 Coronado Circle. Received project design approval and final approval with comments. Item C, 2731 El Prado Road was continued 4 weeks to consent review with comments. Subsequent to this meeting, the applicant and owner are going to be returning to the next full board hearing. Just note that. Item D, 276 Santa Monica Way was continued to the November 21st, 2022 full board hearing with the following comments. So note about these meeting minutes, you have seen these before and they were accepted. However, we need to re-ratify them as the meeting minutes here for item D were altered due to administrative error. So Chair Miller, you were present at this hearing, but just for your consideration there. And also per Board Member Klein's comments at the last meeting, she requested to add in that all existing and proposed trees to be removed and or added to the project site are to be called out on the plans and drawings.
All right, thank you. Do I hear any changes or comments? None? May I have a motion for approval, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
and Board Member Keeling.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to October 3rd. Can we go through those items, please? On the
Yes.
consent.
Item A, 3424 Marina Drive. Received final approval as submitted. Item B, 807 Dolores Drive. The item was postponed indefinitely at the applicant's request. Item C, 1034 Garcia Road. Received project design approval and final approval with conditions and findings. Item D, 1626 Mira Mesa Drive. The item was postponed indefinitely at the applicant's request. Item E, 507 Allen Road, received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to the consent review for final approval with comments and findings. That concludes the meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. May I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair Colas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Keeling.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, let's move on to October 10th, 2022 for consent. Can we go through those items, please?
Yes. Item A, 211 Oliver Road, received project design approval and final approval with comments and findings. Item B, 249 Portezuelo Avenue, received project design approval and final approval with comments and findings. Item C, 140 Loma Media Road, received final approval with the condition that all exterior lighting shall be confirmed to be dark sky compliant. Item D, 3081 Kaiapinen, received final approval with the comment that the board appreciates the applicant's responsiveness to comments and the condition that all finishes are to match the existing residence to the greatest degree possible as illustrated on the proposed plans. That concludes the meeting minutes.
Okay, hearing no comments or changes, may I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Colas,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Keeling.
Yes.
The motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to item D, announcements, requests by applicants or continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items or appeals. Do we have anything like that? And I believe we do.
I have two short announcements.
Okay, thank you.
For the board. Just a note, the advisory board recruitment closes today at 5 p.m. So we'll keep you posted on applicants for the SFDB. And then last week, Ellen Kokinda, the design review supervisor, spoke at the city's ordinance committee regarding proposed quorum and membership changes to the single family design review board. And so there wasn't quite enough time for proper deliberation, so they continued to the next hearing, which was tomorrow. And I understand that the agenda and the report have been distributed to the board members already. And so you're able to attend in person. There will be opportunity for public comment again, or you can attend on Zoom. And then we'll report back on how it went.
All right, thank you. Do you know what time that meeting is tomorrow?
11:30 a.m.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So we'll move on to item number 1. This is for the board. This is a Brown Act item, and I believe we have a special speaker, Ms. Tava Ostranger, Assistant City Attorney. Welcome. If you'd like to go ahead and train us.
Thank you, Chair Miller, board members. It's nice to see you all in person.
Yes.
I wanted to also take the opportunity to thank you for your service. I know this is a very packed agenda, so I will be, like all of yours are, and I will try and be quick, but I also want to be responsive to whatever questions you have. I'll let you know. Also, you can always call me or email me if you have any particular questions that you don't want to ask today.
Okay.
So this is, as the agenda states, a Brown Act training, Ralph M. Brown Act, for open and public meetings. I've also included some ex parte communications and motion making and findings training, as I find that they tend to go hand in hand with the Brown Act. Just for your information, there's sources of information if you want to do your own research that are included on this slide. And of course, like I just said, you can always give me a call and I can point you in different directions. So the Brown Act is all about open and transparent government. It was enacted in 1953 in response to the public's concern about meetings, legislative meetings happening behind closed doors without the public having the benefit of hearing those decisions and why decisions were being made. I think this purpose statement that's found in the Brown Act is very telling of the concern that the public had at that time. When you can see that it says the people in delegating authority did not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. So as we go through the training, if you just keep that in the back of your mind, sometimes the provisions seem onerous to comply with the Brown Act, but really it's just to ensure that the public has all the information they need to help you as decision makers reach the correct decisions. So in understanding who's covered, the Brown Act defines that as a commission, a committee, board, or other body of a local agency, whether permanent or temporary, decision-making or advisory, created by charter, ordinance, resolution, or formal action of a legislative body. So as you can see, there's a broad way that a body can become subject to the Brown Act. And in your case of this board, Single Family Design Review Board, you are created via ordinance. The Historic Landmarks Commission and Architectural Board of Review are created by charter. But just because one board may be created in a particular manner does not mean that they are less subject to the Brown Act requirements. They apply equally to all boards once they become a legislative body. This also includes standing committees, and a lot of people have an understanding that just because a committee may have less than a quorum of the members of the body, that it's not subject to the Brown Act. This isn't the case. Standing committees are subject to the Brown Act, and they can include individuals that are not on legislative bodies. They are advisory or decision-making, and they have continuing jurisdiction over a particular subject matter and a fixed meeting schedule, and they're they're usually formed by the formal action of the legislative body. A good example of one of these standing committees is the State Street Master Plan Committee, which was created by council, and it has 2 members of City Council, 2 members of the Planning Commission, and then various members of the public. But it's still, because it has this continuing subject matter jurisdiction and a fixed meeting schedule, it is subject to the Brown Act. These are often confused with ad hoc committees, which do also contain less than a quorum of the members. However, these are advisory only, so they have no decision-making power, and they're for a very short duration with a specific task, so no fixed meeting schedule either. And those do not have to comply with the Brown Act. A good example of this is the State Street Interim Ad Hoc Committee, which was formed and comprises of 3 members of council, but they don't meet at a regularly scheduled time, and they were for a very limited and specific task of looking at health and safety issues, accessory ability issues on State Street in the interim period. Once they had made their recommendation to council, it was dissolved. So what is a meeting under the Brown Act? It's a congregation of the majority of the members of a legislative body at the same time and location to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. So bringing your attention to 3 points in that government code section: a majority of the members, to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action. So it's just a matter of even receiving information. So if I was to give this training to you with nothing else on the agenda, because the 4 of you as a majority are sitting here, it's still subject to the Brown Act. And then, again, subject matter jurisdiction. So a meeting can also be where the prior slide and government code section talked about at a same location with the majority. It can also still occur, a meeting can occur in a serial fashion where one board member talks to another board member who then talks to another one until you've had a series of communications that have resulted in a majority of the board members talking about something that's within your subject matter jurisdiction. And note again, it's not just that you take action, it's just hearing the information and conveying it to another board member. There's two ways these usually happen, and we call them the daisy chain and the wagon wheel. And the illustration is helpful when you think about each one. Under the daisy chain scenario, one board member communicates to another and then filling in a link of a chain. So in this example, if it was a 5-member board, then if A were to communicate with B on something within their subject matter, and then B was then to communicate that to C, and then subsequently C to D, you've just had a majority communication. What's scary about this one is none of the parties necessarily would know that the violation had happened, which is why we generally discourage communications outside of an agendized public meeting, because you don't always know. Like in this case, while A would know they talked to B, and B knew he talked to A and C, but not necessarily that C was then going to talk to D. Similarly with the wagon wheel, in this scenario, you've got one member of the body who acts as the hub and is the instigator of the communication. And so they're going, and it acts like spokes of a wheel. So A is talking to B and talking to C and talking to D. And so while A should know that they're violating the Brown Act, B, C, and D won't necessarily know. And these communications that can create serial meetings can come in really any form. It's just how you're presenting that information. And it could be a series of emails, or it could be an email, a text, a phone call, a stone tablet. It's just as long as that information is getting from one member to the next. Social media can also be used to facilitate a serial meeting. There was a new law, I guess it's not new now, it was in January 2021, but it imposed stricter regulations on the use of social media by members of a legislative body. So in this case, if you're using social media to make your public opinions on something that's in your subject matter jurisdiction known to the public via a social media platform, if even one person of the legislative body responds to that communication, to that post, it's considered a serial meeting. So the bright line rule is a member cannot respond directly to any communication on an internet-based social media platform regarding a matter within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body that is made or posted by another. So the majority of the members can have their own social media post, and that's fine. And you can have your own personal social medias, and a majority of members can respond to your personal social media pages. That's not to prevent any one of you from having personal relationships and wanting to, post about your vacation and like someone's vacation, but just stay away from the subject matter jurisdiction issues. Sorry,
I'm sorry, Ms. Ostringer, can we go back to that slide?
Yes.
It might have just been a misstatement in the first bullet point, but it says that the legislative body may communicate regarding a matter that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of that body. Am I reading that wrong?
I think it's intended to, if it is right, it's wrong. It's intended to just be permissive in that saying you can use a platform to express your opinions, but what you can't do is have someone else from that body comment on that. So if that's not clear, thank you for letting me know, and I'll fix that for the future. So any response is considered a response. So you can't like or do thumbs up or smiley emojis. The best practice is just stay away from other people's social media platforms within their social, if it's particularly a political social media platform for subject matter issues. Now, there are some exceptions as to when and how you can communicate or staff can communicate with you. There's what we call the unilateral briefing, which allows us as staff and you to communicate with us, and we could have a conversation with each of you on the same subject matter without it being a violation, so long as we are not giving other members your position. So it's for informational purposes only. You could convey your opinions to staff, but we just can't share them with anyone else. And that helps us so we don't inadvertently act as the hub in that wagon wheel, because we could do that too. For legislative items and legislative bodies, not generally what you would have here, but for bodies that are making policy decision, there's a lobbyist exception. So members of the public can lobby their council members to try and affect policy changes, and they can talk to each one of the council members. Council members just have to be careful not to allow the lobbyists to provide other people's opinions, other council members' opinions. You can attend, a majority of you can attend the same conference or seminar, as long as you're not having any discussion that's beyond the limit of that conference or seminar. So if you needed to ask a question for clarity and there's, a majority of you in the room, you can do that. We usually recommend that if you go to these things and you know that a majority of you will be there, that you not sit together, just for public perception, so there's no doubt that you weren't having a private discussion. Similarly with community meetings, if it's a meeting that's organized by a person or organization other than the local agency and it's of general public concern, you can go. Again, no sidebar communications though. Best practice, try and sit separate from each other. You can attend, a majority of you can attend other legislative bodies of another local agency. Just again, no sidebar discussions. And then the good news is you can attend parties together and ceremonial items. Just don't discuss anything. Take your single family design board member hat off and just enjoy the party. And then the final exception is for standing committee attendees. A majority of the body could go even if they're not on the standing committee, but as observers only. We try and discourage that kind of participation, as the standing committees are going to be going in front of the body, most likely to provide advice at some point in the future. And so the attendance really, it serves no purpose in that they'll get the same information when the standing committee comes and reports back to the body. So this is one I know we all know. No action or discussion shall be taken on an item if it's not appearing on a posted agenda. So for a regular meeting, it has to be posted 72 hours in advance. If it's a special meeting, we can post it 24 hours in advance. But the agenda item has to have a clear statement of what's going to be discussed so that interested members of the public can make sure that they attend the meeting if they want to. There are some limited exceptions to this. For example, if you have general public comment and you have a question for the public speaker, or you need clarity, you can ask the public, the member of the public, to clarify something. You just can't get into a discussion with them during that time, because it would then become an item that you're actually discussing, but clarity is fine. You can ask staff the same as well. If a member of the public brings something up at public comment and you say, well, is that true, or where is that, then staff can answer your question. A member of the legislative body may ask questions for clarifications, make brief announcements, or make a brief report on the activity. So for example, if you were on an ad hoc committee, during announcements, you could say, I attended this ad hoc committee on X date. This is what we discussed, and then leave it at that. You have to be careful as board members that sometimes it sounds exciting, and so you want to start getting into the discussion, and that's not something you can do. If you want a greater discussion on it, then as in you can see in 4 and 5, you can ask staff to report back on something. You can ask us to put it on the agenda so that you can have a more in-depth discussion. Also, with regards to 3, if you need to provide reference to staff or resources for factual information, and this I always think of, something comes up, you can say, hey, the board may want to look at AIA guidelines or this, just on your own. As we said, public participation is one of the most important things in the Brown Act. And we cannot require that a member of the public provide their name before they give public comment or sign in. We ask for voluntary compliance. It helps us with our minutes and just to track who's attending our meetings. The legislative body shall not prohibit public criticism. So as hard as it is to hear sometimes, that's the public's right, is to criticize us, and we accept it as part of our service. And then again, avoid debate at public comment, particularly for general public comment items, because it can lead to what would be considered a discussion, an unagendized discussion. And then just for reference, the public does have the right to record a public meeting. So if someone were to bring in their phone and stand in the back and record the meeting, they're allowed to do that. So there's penalties and remedies if we make a mistake. The violation of the Brown Act could potentially be a misdemeanor. However, I want you to take special attention to the language in red, where it says where an action is taken in violation of any provision of this chapter, and where the member intends to deprive the public of information to which the member knows or has reason to know the public is entitled under this chapter is guilty of a misdemeanor. So it's there, but it requires intent, and I don't think usually any of the boards and commissions that we serve on would intentionally do that. So what happens though if it does happen and there's no intent? There is civil remedies. The district attorney or any interested person who thinks that there may have been a violation of the Brown Act can file a civil action in court to prevent any future violations, and also if it's determined that a past act was actually a violation, they will declare that generally void, and it will be sent back to the legislative body for reconsideration. So that's why it's important in design board cases when you're giving project design approval. It's important for us as staff to make sure that our agendas are correct, they contain the sufficient information so that you can hear the item and it can't be challenged. So ex parte communications, what are they and when to avoid them? I like this. It's not necessarily a Brown Act issue because it involves a one-sided communication with generally one legislative member and then a member of another interested party. It's Latin from one side only, and they're communications that commissioners receive outside a public hearing that are not received by all the commissioners, applicants, and opposing parties. So the reason it's important not to engage in ex parte communications is because you as decision makers granting approval of someone's project and their property has some due process considerations. We want to make sure that when someone comes to this board for a decision, that there's a level playing field, that everyone has the same information, gets it at the same time, and has the same opportunity to then rebut that information or provide additional information. So keeping it all in the open also protects against any perceived bias that might have occurred, that one potential board member or commissioner may have been swayed by outside information. And again, it goes back to the Brown Act of, we just want to be as transparent as possible with the public. This is within your guidelines, and it speaks to the policy, and I'm not going to read it, but it does say that it's discouraged. Please don't do it. Don't speak to neighbors. Don't speak to project applicants, property owners, if you can at all avoid it. If it does happen, if someone approaches you in, the grocery store and wants to talk about a project you just saw, or you know it's another one they know it's coming, it's best to just say, thank you. The board really needs to hear what you have to say. It's important. There's two ways you can give us this information. Please submit us an email or a letter, or come in front of the board and talk at public comment so we can all have the benefit of the information. Sometimes members of the public may kind of keep going if that's the case, and it's hard to get away from them, especially if you're in line at the grocery store, there's nowhere to go. So in that case, if you do receive information at the next hearing where that item is coming, make a note. Just after the item's opened, say, you had this communication with this particular person, it was about X, and it maybe lasted this long, and I usually recommend saying, that communication is going to have no bearing on how I view this project at this hearing. And that way everyone knows what was said. Okay, so making motions and findings, this is one of the most important parts of our public meeting process that gets business done. It's my favorite thing to talk about is it's not just about making the motion, it's about making the findings to support the motion. That's really critical, particularly for this board that's relying on findings to support a decision. There's anyone can make the motion. There's sometimes a misconception that the chair can't make a motion. That's not the case. We usually recommend that the chair wait and let someone else make a motion unless he or she is convinced that no one else wants to. The reason for this is the chair controls the floor. He or she gets to control who speaks and when, and so it's a matter of fairness to make sure that everyone feels they have the opportunity to make a motion and be heard. Motions have to be made after public comment has been closed. And generally the best practice is to allow all board members to finish their discussion and thoughts before going ahead and making a motion. And my practice tip is, especially for this board that has lots of findings and very complex motions, is to ask the board secretary or the motion maker to read the motion back, just so you know you've got everything you need, especially if you're asking them to, reduce height by X inches, or that way everyone is clear, and when you come back, it makes it, when you come back to ratify your minutes, a lot easier. As you know, it's a two-step process. The chair will recognize someone to make the motion, and then the motion is ideally started with "I move." Occasionally, someone will say, "Chair, I think I'd like to make a motion," and then it's not always, and they go through the longhand, it's not always clear if there was the motion or they were just throwing it out there to see how supportable it was. If the motion's second by another member, then it becomes a question for debate and eventually subject for a vote. There's these three basic motions. The first motion, or basic motion, like is what I just discussed. That motion can be amended, and an amendment is generally something that just is a small item to make the motion more appealable to the remaining board members. It's another board member may say, ask the the maker of the motion and the seconder, would you be okay if we added this to this as well? It's different than a substitute motion, which is basically intended to do away with the initial motion. It's completely different in most aspects than what the original motion was, or amended motion. And if there's a question as to which type, is it an amended motion or is it a substitute motion, it's up to the chair to decide. Usually it's not going to be hard to distinguish. It's going to be very different from the intent of the original motion. If there's a substitute motion on the floor, so it's been made and seconded, then that motion will be voted on first. If it's approved, then that's the action item. If it fails, then you go back to the original motion and vote on that motion. If that motion passes, you're good. If that one doesn't pass, then you go back to the drawing board and start again. Like I said, they should include findings. The findings are usually set by ordinance or statute. In your case, it's the ordinance that says what findings you need to make in order to approve the project. They show the public why you can and did make the decision. And it provides an opportunity to determine whether there's sufficient facts and evidence in the record to support a decision. And they really are the backbone to your legal challenge. That's what council is going to look at when and if something is appealed to their board. They are why and because statements. It's not enough to say if one of the findings is it compatible to neighborhood height. It's not enough to say, yes, it's compatible to neighborhood height. You should say it's compatible with neighborhood height because it's a single-family home in a neighborhood that contains only single-family homes. And I'm kind of wrapping up here, but it's really particularly important because I'm not sure if this board knows, but we recently amended the ordinance so that council no longer hears appeals de novo, which means de novo means they could take in any information, even information that wasn't presented to you at the hearing. Now they're limited to the record of what was in front of you. And so it makes it a lot more streamlined for council if they've got really good findings, because they're only looking at what you looked at, and then they can compare the record and then also compare to the finding and say, yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. And then, sorry to kind of run through and talk quickly, but I wanted to get you through this. So we do have to take public comment if there's anyone that wants to speak on it, but I'm also available for questions.
All right, thank you. So should we open the floor now for public comment?
Okay, right now I don't see anyone on Zoom who'd like to make a comment on this item. If you'd like to raise your hand, there's an icon at the bottom of your screen. Right now, I don't see any hands raised of anyone who'd like to make a comment on this training. So we're going back to Zoom. No raised hands, so we go ahead and close public comment on this.
All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Does anyone have any questions, please?
Pretty straightforward.
I did have the impression, I must say, as a comment, due to all these housing ordinances that are coming from Sacramento, it does feel like in our community that we're being circumvented by people making decisions about our housing that we don't have control of. So I'm curious to know if the Brown Act, okay, I feels like it pertains to certain committees, but to other committees they're immune to it or something like that. Can you?
The state legislature is also subject to sunshine transparency laws.
Yes.
And so I think the difference is local community members sometimes tend to be more focused, and so we're watching for that, and then all of a sudden it's the bigger state lobbyists that are out at state level watching it, and then all of a sudden it comes down, and we're a little bit shocked by it.
Yes, okay, yeah, interesting. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I think we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Yes, thank you very much. We're at item number 2. This is 1322 Dover Road. This is a continued item for concept review only. The proposal to construct a 3-story, 5,709 square foot single-unit residence, including an 867 square foot basement, a detached 400 square foot garage, and a 755 square foot carport on a vacant parcel in the Hillside Design District. The project includes 1,181 square feet of covered decks and 2,602 square feet of covered decks and then uncovered decks. The project site contains an existing pool and driveway. The proposed total of 6,864 square feet of development on a 40,027 square foot lot is 139% of the maximum guideline floor to lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for design project approval. Project was last reviewed on September 12th, 2022. Do we have minutes from the last meeting to read into the record, please?
Okay. All right, meeting minutes. Number 1 was study reducing the floor to lot area ratio, FAR. Consider a more neutral color palette. 3, consider sandstone material instead of the board form concrete in locations where it can be viewed from the street. 2 board members were in favor of the use of the board form concrete material. 4, provide a comparison study of the previous existing home that burned and the new square footage and elevations. Update the project description accordingly for the record. 5, provide a landscape plan that complies with high fire landscape requirements. 6, provide 3D renderings from street view with landscape included. 7, 1 board member is not in favor of the proposed 3rd story element. 8, provide existing elevations of the previously existing residence destroyed by fire. Identify the square footage of the previous residence on the drawings. 9, provide a color and materials board.
All right, thank you. If you can go through the items and let me know how you address them. I'll let the board know how you address them. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Joseph Flynn. I'm the architect for the project.
That was weird.
Okay. So item number 1, study reducing the floor to lot area ratio. We did reduce the floor to lot area ratio. We reduced the size of the garage. Also the basement level is now qualified as a basement, so the square footage of that level has been removed from the FAR. So those are the 2 main reductions in the FAR. Just interesting to note, or important to note, is when you look at just the residence itself, the FAR is actually 116% of the guideline. It's because we've included the carport, which is actually quite large. It's almost 800 square feet. That's where you see this big bump in FAR. So I wanted to make that distinction up front for the board. Also to note, just in terms of the floor to lot area ratio, it is approximately 1 acre lot. That was something that came up later in the conversation at the previous meeting, so I wanted to make that known up front. It's a double lot. It's a unique lot for the neighborhood. And it will be a new construction project. It's not a rebuild. So it's an actual new proposal, new construction. Item number 2 is consider a more neutral color palette. I do have a materials board. And here it is. So it is neutral. I can go more over this in a moment. Consider sandstone material instead of a board form concrete in locations where it can be viewed from the street. 2 board members were in favor, board formed, 2 were not. So let me go back here. So this is the rendering. So we did make a change. You could see this wall has been changed to smooth stucco, which was actually per the original design, and I do have the elevations, which I'll show you. There is a note, smooth stucco. This wall behind it, it's set back in relief, and it is board formed concrete. That was also part of the original design, which we're adhering to. We have introduced this, this sort of landscape wall, we're calling it, which is sandstone, and sort of tying it into the driveway. And also there are rock elements, stone outcroppings throughout the landscape proposal. So we've hopefully blended some of the ideas that were discussed. Let's see. Item number 4, provide a comparison study of the previous existing home that burned down. I did include square footage in the scope of work. So you can, let's see. So in the second sentence, the previous Neuter house was approximately 5,422. That's based on plans and just my approximations. So given that number, that is actually 110% of the maximum guideline, just compared to ours, which if you, again, looking just at the home, we're at 116. So it's relatively close. Okay, provide landscape plan. I could show you that.
Chair Miller and applicant, just to jump in on this comment, this is new news that I wasn't able to share prior to the hearing, but the Santa Barbara Fire Department did weigh in on this plan, and they relayed that all plants are in compliance with the city's high fire hazard landscape standards.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good news. So it is high fire, and essentially what we're proposing is pretty simple. It's mostly ground cover and slope stabilization measures, you know, and natives. Those are essentially what we're proposing. So you could see, let's see here, the majority of the proposals, this ground cover, coral beauty, and the jute netting for slope stabilization. We also have local boulders that we're going to be importing to create sort of an organic looking hillside with these sort of rock outcroppings that you just saw in the rendering. And then a variety of, you know, low water use, Wookles, low water use, natives. So we have the Valley Violet, yarrow, different native perennials. So in terms of actually like planters as such, there are only a couple. So there's this one here, which is actually not visible from the street. And this one here. We have introduced this landscape feature as you approach the top of the driveway, sort of a natural fountain with some organic, you know, placement of stones and boulders to kind of draw you in and create a sense of entry. You know, and behind it we have the native perennials and native, you know, evergreen shrubs. And that's pretty much the gist of the landscape. That was item number 5. Okay. Item number 6, provide 3D rendering from street view with landscape included. So, so this rendering is realistic based on the height of the home relative to the vantage point. And as you could see, you don't see the second level. You really just see the original single-story level, which we're very interested in preserving. So that study is sort of indicative of that goal to create the same sense of scale of the original Neuter project. So, okay. Number 7, one board member is not in favor of proposed third-story element. Again, this is, like I just explained, the goal is to kind of maintain the original proportion and visual character from the street. So again, this rendering sort of is evidence of that. Furthermore, since the last review, I set back, let me go to the section, I set back the overhang of the second level. Let's see here. Okay. So you can see in this section, we really are complying with the hillside guidelines where the massing of the home is stepped back with the hillside. The street is actually 50 feet below this first floor level. So based on that angle, when you're looking up, you really do not see this level at all. And there's no neighbors behind us. There's actually a big public park. I believe it's public, and maybe it's privately owned, I'm not sure. But essentially, yeah, so I set back this overhang right here. I set that back an additional 6.5 feet. It was here. I've set it back to there since the last meeting to further, meet the goal of having this top level sort of invisible from, the street. Okay. Provide existing number 8, provide existing elevations of previously existing residents destroyed by fire. Identify square footage of previous residents on drawings. Let's see. Okay, so this is our south elevation. It's the primary elevation. This is the original drawing of the front. So you can see we're really proposing the same thing, essentially. Post and beam style architecture. The posts are 8 feet on center, supporting these beams that go all the way through. That's the original, showing the exact same thing. This is a steel beam that goes all the way through that way, so you can see that steel beam. The note about the wall is here. It's hard to make out, but it does say plaster, smooth plaster. And then ours is plaster. And then this is our concrete wall, and then the original, see it says concrete wall there, which is very hard to see from the street. It's actually underneath this patio. And then we've added this kind of sandstone landscape wall. Okay, materials board. That's item number 9. That's the last comment. Okay, so smooth stucco, it's this color right here, which is, it's called crystal white, La Habra crystal white. It's kind of a slightly off-white. Here's an example of the board form concrete, just natural finish board form concrete. We do have the wood rain screen walls. Here's an example of that. Example of the sandstone planter wall. And then we do have steel cable railings. Here's an example of that. And then the exposed beams and posts will be a natural finish stain. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Did we get any public comment, please?
Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Okay, so for those attending on Zoom and those who would like to make oral public comment, please click on the raise your hand icon and we will call upon you. And when we do so, please unmute yourself. And while we give people those a chance on Zoom, I'll ask that if anyone is here attending in person, please fill out a speaker slip if you'd like to speak on this item and provide it to us. Chair Miller and to the board members, it looks like we received one written correspondence that was distributed prior from Curry Sawyer. Ms. Gu, do we have any raised hands on Zoom?
At this time, I do not see any raised hands at all.
We will close virtual public comment, and again, anyone here wishing to speak on this item? Okay, so we'll close in-person public comment as well, and I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any questions, please?
Can you skip over me and come back to me,
Sure.
please?
Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, is it possible to pull up the items?
Oh, the minutes?
Yes, just so.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, here, we did not ask for neighborhood compatibility 20 closest neighbors studies last time. But we did say reduce FAR. Okay, I guess that's not a question, apologize. I guess the garage, the detached garage, can you talk a little bit more about why you chose to do that design-wise?
Yes, and actually, thank you for bringing that up. There was a design change there that I forgot to mention, so I'll do that now. So previously, we actually had a roof deck on top of the detached garage. We've actually removed that. So for different reasons, but there was an adjacency issue with the neighbor that we removed it before we even heard the comment, so. So anyways, we've removed that, and really the reason for the garage is to have enclosed interior space for cars. I think cars would be parked there regardless. There's an empty, concrete area to park, so why not make a nice enclosed garage rather than having cars just kind of there? So it is the minimum size. I reduced the size actually to 400 square feet. So it's not an oversized garage. It's just a basic minimum size garage. And that's it.
Thank you. Can you go over, apologize, I'm new, a little not fluid, the square footages again, in particular decks, maybe on the sections, what's covered, what's uncovered. I'm trying to, understand the massing and the bulk better of the house, because what you're saying is the house really is around 3,000 feet or something, but there's a lot of extra deck and covered deck that you're proposing, which brings that up. And if you know the existing residence, was it 5,000 feet of enclosed building, or what was the deck kind of ratio of that existing home?
Sure, no problem. So unfortunately, I don't know the original in terms of how much deck space versus interior space. I can walk you through this proposal and what we're showing for exterior decks.
And I don't know if, Chair Anderson, it says in the description there's 1,181 square feet of covered decks and 2,602 square feet of uncovered decks.
Right. Yeah, so if you can just walk me through maybe your roof plan and the section of where the uncovered versus covered exists.
Absolutely. So let me start with the section. And this is to kind of back up and talk about the overall architecture here. So this main first level that you're seeing right here, this is the original design. The proposal in terms of what we're adding to that original design really is this second level, which starts back here on the hillside, and it's actually supported by these steel columns. And then it essentially just kind of slides over the top of that original. So the roof of the original Neutra project now becomes a roof deck that, again, is not visible from the street. We've also set back the railing. You can see the railing here. So that's also set back where the view angle from the street has been studied, where you cannot see the railing. I'll go to a roof plan. So, let's see. So here's the roof plan. So all this is the roof of the floor below, which is the original Neutra design, and then this is our new roof, kind of overlapping it in a sense. By the way, this red line was the previous roof line from the last meeting, and I've reduced it to this dark line, so I have reduced it even further. But yeah, essentially this whole space is, a roof deck.
Right, so there's 2602 roof deck in the front, and then the covered way back, not visible, is the 1181 square feet.
I believe so.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are you ready to ask your questions, Vice Chair?
I think that was, I don't know that I have any more questions. Can we look at, I understand that the roof of this, I'll call it the second floor, or the original primary floor, is basically serving a roof deck purpose now. Trying to understand towards the east, can we see the site plan with the pool, please? Okay, so in addition to that uncovered third floor roof deck, we also have the pool area, the turf area, and these terraces that exist to serve the primary level, correct? Those are all on the same level as the original residence, right?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit more about how the rear yard is used, or whether it is usable, or I see some sort of square pattern up there, sort of floating within the poche. I don't know what that says. I can't read that.
Certainly. That area is a solar array, and it's currently there, working with staff to find out if there's a permit on file, et cetera, but that's where the solar panels will be. This is a pretty steep hillside, so it really is not usable. We have, however, proposed this little elevated patio, essentially, for a spa. It's part of the kind of the pool design that we're proposing. So you step up here from this paved area to get into the spa. But that's essentially it. So this whole back area is really too steep to use, and the cost of terracing it would be too great. Really, the main takeaway in terms of the design and what we're proposing is there's an absolutely fantastic ocean view of all of Santa Barbara. You could see all the way out to as far as the eye could see. It's truly a unique lot, and it's a fantastic view. So the homeowner, for obvious reasons, wants to capitalize on such a beautiful view, and the roof deck is integral for his enjoyment of that view. So, but to answer your questions about these areas, yes, these are all, usable areas. They were part of the original Neutra design. We plan to bring them back to life.
So this 26, let me go back and ask staff a question here. So I heard from the applicant that there's a reduction in square footage before us today relative to our initial review of the project. So is the description in front of us current, or is it reflective of the last review?
Yes. Chair Miller, through you to Vice Chair Kawas. This project description reflects the current drawings being shown here today. I understand there's approximately a 28% reduction in FAR.
Okay, and the 5,709 square feet is inclusive of the 867 square foot basement. I'm trying to understand what these numbers are representing, because we're talking about very large numbers here. So we've got 5,700 square feet of a residence. Does that include the basement of 867 square feet?
Vice Chair Kawas, so the FAR reflected in the project description includes the residence, the garage, and the carport. And my understanding is the basement for this particular residence is excluded from the FAR calculation.
Okay, so the basement is excluded because it's non-habitable. And then what about the covered and uncovered exterior areas?
The covered and uncovered decks are not included as part of FAR and per the municipal code.
Okay, so we're looking at a total development on this property, if I'm understanding the project description properly, of, I'm gonna do quick math here. 3, 8, 6, 7. 47, 53, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,400 square feet. Does that sound correct?
I'm not sure what you're referencing by that number when you say development, because I've
I'm-
given you the FAR numbers and the floor area ratios and
I'm talking
the
about
actual-
anything that is not natural topography. So there's 5,700 square feet of habitable areas or garage and carport. There's 2,600 of uncovered decks or outdoor areas, and there's 11,080, Square feet.
1,100.
I'm sorry, 1,181 square feet of covered. Is that correct?
I can't verify if that's correct. I have to actually study it and look at it and do the math.
I think what her question is the 5,709 square feet plus 1,181 plus 2,602 square feet. Like,
Right.
is that correct or not?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to,
Or is just the house itself, that's conditioned space, 5,709 square feet?
it's the condition, as staff reported, it's the conditioned space. The 5,709 represents conditioned space, the 755 square foot carport, and 400 square feet. So the house nets out roughly at 5,700 minus, I'll call it 1,200, somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,500 square feet.
Can I suggest we look at the square footage on the cover sheet that the applicant has
Well, there
pulled
you
up?
go.
Yes, that's a great idea. Okay. Oh, those are my only questions.
All right, thank you. Board Member Arkalian, do you have any questions, please?
Just a quick moment. I do. Did the previous Nutra house have a garage at all?
No, did not have an enclosed garage.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Yeah, I really appreciate these existing pictures you have here. So that's the solar panels in the back there that are already there, right?
Yes.
And when you say it's a double lot, does that FAR include the 2 lots, or is it based on half of the lot?
Well, meaning it's twice the size
Size
of
of
its
the- okay.
adjoining neighbors, right? But it is one legal lot.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess those are my only questions, so I'm going to bring it back to the board for comments. Are you
Can I
ready
make
for
one?
comments, Vice Chair?
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
Okay, I just want, just since we're looking at this aerial view, I just wanted to point out what's behind this property, which, you know, essentially our lot line is here, more or less. And this hillside continues to climb up quite a ways up to Mission Ridge, which is up here. There's really no blockage of any view whatsoever from any of the neighbors above us or from any of the neighbors on either side of us. So I understand the size of the home is being called into question, but I would like to just say that it really is not impacting the neighborhood visually or otherwise. And also, based on the fact that this lot is above 15,000 square feet, there is no FAR limit for this lot. There's a single-family design review guideline, but there's actually, per the municipal code,
That's correct.
there is no FAR limit.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring it back for comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
I think the project's too big. I just do. I think there's, I'm torn because I believe that we have an amazing environment here and we should take full advantage of outdoor spaces. And I understand the nature of this residence and that outdoor spaces might be more rectilinear, they might be more built form in nature than organic or built into the hillside like we might see in a Mediterranean home. But I feel like the house was relatively large previously. I mean, if you look at these aerial photos that you just had up on the screen, the previous home already dominated the neighboring parcels. And now we're being asked to allow more. And I can appreciate the desire to take advantage of the views, but I think there's ways of doing that without, having a roof deck that is large as the house. I appreciate the fact that the applicant provided us with this rendering that we're looking at on the screen, which I think was intended to meet our request in the last meeting. But I think if we had more studies done that were taken from various vantage points on the street itself, across the street, as opposed to right at property line, we might read this house differently. I'm thinking about a project that we had up on Las Tunas, which was a very similar house to this, kind of in design. And it was up at the top of the property, but it was hunkered down and it is viewed differently. I'm not convinced that you're not going to read the guardrail or the third floor at all. And I think the nature of this home originally, which I think you're trying to honor, is, low, sleek, and horizontal in nature. And so I struggle with the concept of both adding more square footage as well as putting it on an additional level. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, generally in agreement with the front deck, just the size of it. It's a lovely design, love it, and it's totally going to enhance the neighborhood. But you know, just looking at that front deck alone with the side two neighbors, which we haven't seen, how they're affected, but, I mean, that kind of square footage, I mean, you could get 200 people, 150 people on that roof deck. So noise-wise, to me, that, you know, and then, right, we've got a guardrail across, you know, the front, and maybe it's set back and not really visible from the street, but it's possible that, you know, I mean, that adds to the bulk of the project. So that's my concern as well, kind of seconding what Leslie said. Also, the detached garage, I'm struggling with design-wise, because mid-century is typically the carport. I understand, you know, covering it and wanting that full enclosure, but how it's connected to the Nutra design, struggling with still. And thank you for, yeah, the roof deck off of the top of it. I mean, that made it seem more awkward to me, so. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Kaylin, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So, first of all, I do appreciate you providing the elevation, trying to put it side by side. You know, I ask myself, you know, what if this was not a Nutra house? What if you were to start from ground zero, like this was a blank canvas, and you know, I feel like a lot of my judgment is being hung about this. You know, there was a Nutra house before, you know, with this architecture and this style, because you know, it's a one of a kind house that was there, and now you're creating another one of a kind house. And I've driven by this property before this meeting and looking at other houses in the neighborhood and those styles, and I mean, this one really sticks out. I do appreciate you're trying to honor a renowned architect, but I know these Santa Barbara guidelines have changed on how we look at projects. This is, you know, you made it clear in the previous meeting that this is a new build. This isn't like a remodel or reworking. You're putting something new, and you're honoring this architect too. I've been on page one pretty much like for a very long time. You know, the cover sheet that has the building area square footage, and then in the project description, the Nutra square footage. And yeah, in support of Vice Chair Colossus' comment, you know, I'm seeing under the Nutra house had 5422 square feet, including a basement and the carport. And this proposed one does not include the basement, the 5709. I mean, it would be helpful. I appreciate you providing square footages of the Nutra. I mean, I feel like a table would be helpful, additional, putting the numbers side by side a little bit better, just because of the magnitude of this project, more of a study around that per floor, perhaps. But yeah, to me, just from, if I wanted to try to give you feedback now, just without looking at the numbers, since I'm a number cruncher, I mean, it doesn't seem to line up with what the Nutra house was. And I understand you're mentioning this is a double lot, but I think an FAR study of the adjacent homes would be helpful in trying to make me understand and be on board. Yeah, understanding what the little more information of, you know, you mentioned the FAR of what the Nutra was, but, you know, putting it in writing side by side, just having me get it, understand it better, that would be helpful. And besides that, I'm in support of Board Member Anderson's comments about the deck. I mean, there's some massive, you know, the size of the decks of the front deck, and whether it's uncovered or if it's covered. I've been looking at other homes in this area, and just the amount of deck space that is going on here is very substantial. I understand the intent of it for the view, but I feel like the view can be attained by not having as much of a deck. I mean, I feel like this amount of deck it's inviting to, I don't know what it's kind of out of my purview what the intent of the size is, but, you know, compared to what the other houses are in the neighborhood, maybe if I could see other decks of this magnitude, that could help me register it better. But I'm struggling right now with that. So those are my comments for now. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a beautifully designed house, so, I just want to say, good job. But size, bulk, and scale in this neighborhood is not compatible. That house that Bob Hope built in Palm Springs on the top of the hill, do you know what that house? Well, it kind of reminds me of, it's a house he had built up there, and it's real strange. It had these weird roof things, and it was gigantic. But it was also on a huge property, but it was primarily used for fundraisers. And he'd invite hundreds of people up there for fundraising activities and stuff like that. And this kind of informs me that this house would be used for something with very large gatherings, as what I think Vice Chair Colossus was kind of intonating. So, yeah,
That wasn't me.
that wasn't you. It was,
Just to clarify.
okay, well, one of you. Anyway, I will take full responsibility for that comment. So I think, yeah, it's the scale and the size are way out of whack, and I think they really need to be studied and reduced, and especially the deck areas need to be reduced considerably. So I think you need to just take into consideration your design juices with what you've been hearing about deck reduction, and really talk to your client with the understanding because as what Board Ari Kellyan mentioned, this is a new house. This is not you're building a brand new structure. So in that context, we have to take that into consideration in terms of neighborhood compatibility standards and size, bulk, and scale. I think that I've said enough. So anyway, would someone like to entertain a motion? And this is for comments only, please.
I think Mr. Arakilian could do a really good job.
I can try. Sure. I'd like to make a motion to return to the full board indefinitely with the following comments. For the applicant to provide any additional comparison studies between the Nutra house and the previous Nutra house and this current house in terms of square footage per floor, including FAR analysis. For the size of the covered and uncovered decks to be reduced to be more compatible with the neighborhood, to provide an FAR study of immediately adjacent properties, that's all I noted for now, but yeah, if anyone has anything to add after the second, thanks.
I just want to interject real quickly. The house I'm referring to about Bob Hope is designed by John Lautner. That was the house. Anyway. Oh, shoot. No, wait. I'll give it to you later. Do I have a second?
Thank you.
I'll second that motion, and I would just like to add a comment, if it's acceptable to the maker of the motion, that in general, the board is struggling with the perceived size and bulk of the project, and that may partially have to do with the square footage associated with the exterior spaces.
Does the maker of the motion accept that?
Yes, and I would I would also like to add for the applicant to consider removal of the top story.
There was another comment that someone on the board made about the garage. I don't know if you want to include that. That was not my comment, but I just don't want it to get lost.
Wanted to, can you repeat that, the comment about the garage?
Yeah, just the enclosed garage, just design-wise, if you could provide more justification of the detached building versus the carport and/or extended carport in the main home, and enclosed potentially. Just design-wise, take a look. It feels very disconnected to me, little 20-foot, 20 by 20 garage. Also, I could add, am I allowed to add?
Yep, yeah. We're under discussion.
The idea of, the area, 20 closest homes and the decks. I mean, if there are some larger decks in that area, that would be, substantiate the size of yours. Also help me out, I thought that we had a 250 square foot, 10% floor area, kind of generally is highly scrutinized if we're over.
The recommended FAR guidelines is 85%. If they exceed 85%, it goes under a different level of review. But there is not, he was correct in saying that there is not a limit maximum FAR.
Understood, but we generally highly scrutinize decks, enclosed or open, over 250 square feet.
I'm not familiar with that. And that-
Okay.
But there's, there's a
And
design
10%
discretion. yeah. Maybe-
the
you might be
square
correct.
footage,
I just-
so.
I'm not sure. Is that correct?
Chair Miller, I would need to confirm with zoning staff on that. I can get back to you at the next hearing.
The only thing I know about decks is if a large secondary or second story or upper deck, if it's within 15 feet of an adjacent property line, that it, again, it's not required, but it's under a higher level of scrutiny or review as if its appropriateness. But that's all I can say about that. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of lost at the motion now. Can we go back to what's been said so far on the motion?
Chair Miller, so we had a motion on the table. We've amended it. Vice Chair Kawas was a seconder, so if you both agree to Board Member Anderson's comments, we can include those in the motion, and we can recap the motion if necessary.
I would like to phrase, add a comment or add to the motion based on Board Member Anderson's comments as follows. For the applicant to consider an attached garage or to provide justification on how the detached garage is compatible with the proposed architectural style. And for the applicant to study the size of the decks of the proposed uncovered and covered decks within the immediate neighborhood. And for the FAR study to be of the immediate neighborhood, I don't believe a 20 closest home study is needed, but immediate neighborhood is fine with me. Thanks.
And I'll second that as amended.
Can you please read the motion for us, please?
Okay, continue to, go ahead.
Okay. Board members, the motion was continued indefinitely to return to the full board. 1, provide additional, comparison studies between the previous Nutra residence and the proposed square footage regarding the FAR analysis. And specifically to provide an FAR analysis table on the cover sheet. 2. Reduce the proposed uncovered and covered deck space to be compatible with the neighborhood. 3. Provide a FAR study of the immediate adjacent properties or neighborhood. 4. In general, the board is struggling with the perceived size and bulk, and this might be due to the square footage of the exterior spaces, such as the decks. 5. Consider removal of the third story element. 6. Restudy the attached garage and how it fits in with the proposed design.
That was
7. Yeah.
Sorry, that was detached.
Oh, sorry, detached, correct. 7, study the size of the uncovered and covered decks in terms of the immediate neighborhood examples. That concludes the motion.
With the first point in the motion, the additional comparison studies, if we can, you mentioned an FAR analysis, if possible, a square footage analysis per floor from the previous, a table with the square footage per floor with the previous residence and this proposed residence. Everything else looks good. Thanks.
Does the seconder agree with that?
I think the language regarding the garage was lost, but if that can be cleaned up in the minutes, I'm fine with it as it stands, given that that gets cleaned up.
I'm sorry, can you specifically say what you mean by lost?
As read back to us by staff, it's very general, and I think the comment that was made by Mr. Arakelian was more articulate. I think he said something on the order of study the enclosed garage and consider whether it be attached to the residence, and study it relative to the style of the home and whether it's appropriate given the style of the home.
Does the maker of the motion agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, I believe we're ready for a roll call. May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Claus,
Yes?
Board Member Killian,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
motion. All right, motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 3. This is a concept review only. This is 939 Carrillo Road. This proposal to construct an 89 square foot first floor addition and a 624 square foot second floor addition to an existing 1,227 square foot single unit residence located in the Hillside Design District. Project includes a remodel of the kitchen, living room, and bedroom area, a new bathroom on the first floor, and landscape changes. Proposed total of 2,375 square feet on an 8,460 square foot lot is 72% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Welcome, and if you could introduce yourself and show us your design, your project.
Hello, I'm Kent Mixon, architect for Androlitis Mixon Architects. And
Hi, this is Itong with Kiso Design. I'm a landscape designer for this project.
Welcome.
what did I touch? Did I just screw that up, Heidi? Can I just stretch it? Oh, right here? Yeah. There you go. Sorry. It's sensitive. I'm going to zoom in here. All right. So, am I on? Yeah. All right, I'll start here with just kind of reviewing quickly some analysis of the existing tabulations. The existing main house is 1,227 square feet. There's a detached garage down at the street level that's 314. It gives us a total of 1,541 square feet. We have an addition proposed at the first floor of the residence of 89 square feet, and then a second floor addition for the master closet, bathroom, closets, 624, with the total square footage, including the garage, of 1940. I'm sorry, I take that back. Total square footage, including the garage, is 2375. It's 1940 excluding the garage. So we'll kind of go to the pictures here. And, oh, man, it's sensitive. So this is that kind of it's the street level. You can see there's a boulevard strip with the sidewalk and then a 6 to 8 foot retaining wall at the lower end of the property. You can see the garage there. The first picture is kind of the house to our west. That's our house in the center there. And then we have the site steps down pretty dramatically after our site to the neighbor to our east. And then it starts to kind of level off into this valley on that side. Picture from the street straight onto our house. These are some pictures kind of at the back of our house. It's a very terraced lot because it slopes a lot from the street up to the northern property line. This is kind of standing on the east side of the house looking out towards the street view. And this is kind of standing back on our, the existing terrace that's there now, looking at the back of the house, directly at the back of the house. This view here is of the western side, near the kitchen towards the front of the house, and then this is looking back towards the northern property line from that western side. And then again, a couple of other street views of the house. You can see the house to our west. This is our house, and then the house to our east there. This is looking at it on the street level, looking up towards our house, which is here, and this is the house to our east. This number 10 site is looking back towards our northern neighbor at the property line there, and their deck that's just above our property line. And there's our existing terrace that's there now. And then kind of looking north from the western side and the eastern side of the property of the house. So I'll zoom out. We can go back to the site plan. Wow, it jumps quite a bit from between views, doesn't it? I guess I'm gonna have to zoom out. So this is the existing site, sidewalk and streets out here, property line, and then you walk through that retaining wall up to the existing entry. The garage sits on this kind of southeast corner of the property. There's all kinds of existing kind of retaining walls and terraces that have been built and are in different states of failure on the property right now. And then these shaded images are of our neighbors to the east and west and that northern neighbor. And then this shows the proposed site plan with some improvements overlaid that Yitong will get to later with some new terrace retaining walls. You can see in the shadow areas on our site plan, those are the limits of the first floor addition proposed to the house. That's the 89 square feet. And this line, keep in mind here, this line here, can you see my mouse? Is basically the limit of the forward development of the proposed addition, with exception of there is a little node off the front for a little study on the front of the house, but everything else is proposed at this backside terrace. This is the stormwater management stuff. I don't know if you guys want to get into that at this point. A little, man, it's so sensitive. Site section, this is kind of through the western, between the western property line and our western edge of the house. You can see the step at the front sidewalk as it slopes up, and then there's probably about I think it's about a 6-foot difference from the northern property line to this back side of the building. This is just kind of a 3D image of that existing eastern house with our proposed addition. And that lower image is kind of standing at the back out towards the north side of our residence. You can see the eastern and western neighbors here on either side of us. I don't know if we can look at the existing, right now that's the existing single-story tile roof on the front with a kind of a flat, really short parapet on the back side of the house. Existing little Spanish cottage. We'll be removing the existing awning here. That's an aluminum awning that was added at some point over this existing front porch. And then these are the different images of the existing elevations. So this is the proposed plan. You can see again the shaded area here and this addition here on the eastern side of bedroom 2, where the additions being proposed on the first floor. The stairs on this back portion of the project, and then reconfiguring the area for the internal bathrooms to get these 2 bedrooms to work, and then coming up to the existing or the proposed master bedroom stair again here on the back, and a pretty modest master bathroom with a study at the front. Again, all Spanish tile, 2-piece Spanish tile roof proposed. And then these are the elevations, the front elevation right in front of the house. The addition, we have some plaster screen details. Windows are pretty modest. There's some awnings that are proposed over a couple of these south-facing front windows. And then also over, there's a French door with a kind of a Juliet balcony area off the end of the master bedroom with a little wrought iron balcony there. And then this front porch area is the area I was talking about, the removing the existing aluminum awning, and doing something that's more trellis-like that picks up on the details that we're doing off the kitchen and off the back for the dining terrace there. And this is looking at the back of the house. These windows are basically in circulation. This is in the stairwell of the stair, and these are on flanking either side of the nightstand in the master bedroom, and this is in a closet here. So, and then the western side of the house with the little trellis off the kitchen space as well, and again another kind of a plaster grill detail. Small, pretty modest windows. And this is the landscape plan.
Okay, a brief on the existing condition. As you notice, throughout the site, there are many terraces and level changes. The configuration of the pathways and the different outdoor spaces are confusing to walk around and potentially becoming a trip hazard. On top of that, the backyard is being exposed to the sun and the neighbor. So we're trying to create a more enjoyable outdoor experience with planting and structure to provide shade and privacy. For planting, the owner has established a nice California native garden that just needs to be refreshed with some species that are better and adapted to the coastal climate. Our design intent here is to mainly clean up the landscape and work with the existing terrain to simplify the current construction layout to enhance the experience walking through the landscape and utilizing better materials while keeping the character of the neighborhood and providing adequate screening to the adjacent properties. The planting palette is owner-driven and focuses on California coastal native and drought-tolerant plants that are compliant with NWILO. To give you a walkthrough of the design, starting at the
Use that.
thank you. Starting from the street here, we're planning to demo this corner concrete pad to enlarge the planter space here. And walking through the stone staircase, we also wanted to widen up and partially reconfigure the staircases so it's easier to access. To the left of it, we're also planning to add a informal maintenance walk pathway to maintain the front yard planting, as well as widening the access pathways to the side yard and the entrance steps. Right now, it's almost less than 3 feet with the railing next to it. And the big moves here are one main axis on the left side that kind of clean up what this currently is kind of zigzagging throughout the spaces with those low terracing steps. And then moving to this transitional landscape area, we also call it native rock garden. It will be planted with drought-tolerant native shrubs and perennials with a potential to add a water feature or a dry creek drainage feature to the left. And moving up, it's also a separation between the house and the upper terrace area. This pergola here is gonna mainly providing more shade in the backyard and also screening us from the neighbor. To the left, it's a native lawn that will be Corapia, that's what we are thinking. And also to the right is a hot tub on a wood deck that will be designed no more than 18 inches above the existing grade with some screening wood panels. Also, on top of that, we are focusing on screening both the east of the property line and the north of the property line to give privacy of our owner and the adjacent neighbors. And yeah, overall, our design is try to keep the main layout and match the material that are used in the existing landscape, but simplifying the elevation changes and the irregular landscape geometries with minimal grading disturbance, and refresh the planting and incorporate a structure that will provide more screening and screening from the sun and the neighbors. We have section drawings previously to show too sensitive. To show the levels of elevation changes here and how just being more respectful for between our neighbor and us with the screening on both sides. And this is a section drawing of our hot tubs wood deck sitting on top of the existing grade from 2 section views. And here is a inspiration image board that showcase of the materials and styles that we are trying to propose here. Thank you.
I just have a couple of things to add, just to reiterate. I know you read in the initial introduction that, when we went through the tabulations of the square footage, we feel like it's a pretty modest addition. And again, we're at 72% of maximum FAR being, allowed here. The house, we've tried to be respectful of being at kind of a high point in the neighborhood and stepping that thing back and the mass back from the street and keeping it towards the back side of the middle of the existing house, essentially. And we're still, 48 feet from the northern property line with the back of our existing house. So I think that's.
Yeah, because your 15 minutes are
Okay.
up, so.
All right, good deal. We're
Do you
up.
need more
We're
time, or-
done. No, we're done.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any public comment, please?
Thanks. Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Okay, so opening virtual public comment. For those attending on Zoom and wish to make oral public comment, please select the raise your hand icon. When staff calls upon you, please unmute yourself. While we're waiting on that, I will turn to our written correspondence. So Chair Miller, board members, we did receive 6 written correspondence that were distributed prior to the hearing. Ms. Gu, do we have any hands raised on Zoom?
I currently do not see any raised hands on Zoom.
Okay.
Not at all.
Thank you. And for those attending in person who wish to make public comment, I will call you up. I've received 3 speaker slips, but there's still opportunity to fill out a speaker slips located in the corner over there, and then just bring it on up. So when called up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak, and please touch the base of the microphone. It will light up green and speak into the microphone. Our
I
first.
have a quick comment. The things are red up there. Does that matter? What does that mean? I thought those were speakers.
That's if, sorry. Mr. Chair, that's if we actually do have a person on Zoom, and at this time we do not.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Miller. Okay, our first speaker will be Bonnie.
Hi, I'm a neighbor of Lynn Herrico, and her property backs up to the 939 Carrillo. She's on Medio Road, and I live on the corner of Medio and Garcia Road. And part of this remodel involves an addition of a second story, and her concern is that it's going to block her view, which is, the treasured part of being on the Riviera. And so that's my concern also for her. And it also kind of affects our environment, our privacy issues for her, and sets a precedent in the neighborhood. And I'm hoping there can be some sort of compromise with the view for Lynn that will make both of the owners happy. And that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our next speaker is Lynn.
And do I need to do anything? No. Okay. And I'm looking at Zoom, right? My lawyer is is going to be watching. And please redirect me if you need to hear any other comments from me. I am probably the neighbor most affected by this project. I'm Lynn Horniak. I'm the owner of 912 Medio Road. I'll give you a quick background. I'll talk about the current issue and then what I'm requesting of the board. Is that
Can we have the site plan so you can see the site plan? I
I apologize. I've been on travel and could not get you photos prior to the meeting here, given that it was the owners had agreed that they wouldn't hold the meeting while I was gone. I arrived back Saturday night. Quick background. As I said, I'm the neighbor. I'm directly uphill and to the northwest. I do have to say that the architect's photos do not reflect at all the impact on my property. And so I've brought some photos. Again, I'm sorry I couldn't give that. I just printed them out. Happy to share them. My husband and I bought this property May 2018, prior to the current owners at 939 Carrillo. We'd rented in the neighborhood for 6 winters and just loved the neighborhood, and we had the option to buy there. Part of the reason was, and you can see in the first photo, it was an incredible view. we were downsizing, it was our last home to live in. Unfortunately, my husband passed away last year, so I am the sole steward of our estate, and I plan to continue to live there. I first heard of this project August 25th while I was traveling, saw the plans on August 31st. Kent raised a single pole to show where the location might be. Roxanne was on the balcony with me, deck with me, and it became clear that it will not only obstruct my view, but the potential for my privacy to be affected. The windows could look directly down into my deck and living room. And you'll see from the photos, the house is designed. And the living room windows roll back. It looks out right over that area to the deck, to the waterfront. So not only will it affect my privacy, but I was looking at loss of property value. And I'm looking at 6 figures from what I can tell. I will say that the loss of privacy is difficult to ascertain in terms of loss of property value, given that this hearing came up very quickly, but it won't be insignificant, and I am very happy to get it appraised.
Sorry to interrupt, just a moment. Chair Miller, at your discretion, would you like to allow extra time for this public comment?
Sure, go ahead. How much more time do you need?
2 minutes.
Okay, fine. Yeah,
Thank you
got
so
just granted
much.
2 minutes.
I appreciate that. I addressed my concerns with Kent and Roxanne. I believe they filed the original plans regardless of our discussion. They went on holiday. I was away with my family, so I'm just back. If I'm incorrect, I will stand corrected. I'm also concerned about the precedents in the neighborhood. This, I believe, would be the first raising up in the area right below us. I could be wrong about that, and I'm hoping other neighbors will speak to that. In summary, make it short, I'm asking the board for 3 things. I understand that views are not specifically protected in the city of Santa Barbara, but that you as a board do have the authority to, based on city guidelines, codes, and statutes, to minimize negative impacts of new structures on immediate adjacent uphill neighbors, which would be me, and lessen the loss of privacy that a new structure would cause a neighbor at the design and concept review, which I understand this is. And things could still be modified and approved. So I request 3 things. One is that the applicants erect a full-story pole mock-up so that the board can better understand the impact of the project on me and other neighbors as well. That you make a site visit. I'm very happy to have you over at my property, the neighbors' properties, so after the story poles are erected so you can see the impact. And third, to consider reducing the mass and scale of the addition or repositioning of the second level addition to minimize its impacts. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The last speaker slip I have here is for Tom.
Hello. Before I start, I would like some clarification on the applicant owner. The name here is Jean Chung and Jeff Thompson. I
Yes.
don't think they're the,
I can speak to that. My apologies. It's an error and it has been brought to my attention. It is correct on the agenda and it will be corrected in any future mailing. Sorry about that.
okay, and is this 2-minute limit, since I'm the last speaker, is it hard and fast? Okay, well, I'm going to have to read fast then.
Okay.
My name is Tom Moran. I live at 935 Carrillo Road, right next to the 939 project. I oppose the 939 East Carrillo Road project remodel for its size, scope, and impact it will have on the homes surrounding it, especially the permanent loss of view, privacy, and sunlight. A little history of the neighborhood. This nearly century-old neighborhood on the Riviera consists of small cottages. The smallest is 757 square feet, with an average size of approximately 1,275 square feet. And it's punctuated by small garages. The first point that I'd like to make is the site poles or the dimension poles that were promised to me by the owners were never in place. It's imperative that we have these poles so everyone can know the size of this. View blocking on Media Road is a definite issue. And one thing that is really at issue here is the overt theft and privacy of sunlight. Please view the homes at 909 and 917 Creo Road, which abut one another. The two-story, the 909 is a Spanish-style single-story. The 917 two-story, and the west-facing side is a sheer wall of with windows peering directly down into the 909 home. The privacy does not exist. Sunlight is blocked.
Sir,
until
are you 2 minutes is up? How much more time do you think you need?
maybe a minute and 34 seconds.
Okay, I'll give you a minute and 34 seconds. Okay, go.
The home, so if you take that, if you transpose that scenario over to the east side of this home, of the 939 home, you'll find that it's exactly the same. There's going to be a sheer wall with windows looking directly down, and this is about the angle where it's going to be looking down. It's a steep drop to the 947 home, and I think that in itself is enough to stop this project.
Okay, are you finished? Does that conclude your presentation?
Well, I have more to say, but
I think we got the gist. Thank you.
But could I give you could I give the board? This is a picture of the
Okay,
of the 917.
got it.
Well, maybe not all. There's 4 of them.
So- All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, did we have anyone else?
Are there any further people in the audience that would like to provide public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Back to you, Chair Miller.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Colossus, do you have any questions, please?
I do. I just have to find them in my notes. Quick technical clarification on the square footage that was on the title sheet. If you go back to the tabulations that you ran us through at the outset. In the upper portion of the tabulation, the garage was noted as being 300 and some odd square feet, but then down below it was noted as 400. I don't know if that's a net versus gross. If you're looking under the net. Okay, so,
Yes, that is
do you
an
know
error.
which one is the correct number?
I believe the top one is the existing square footage. the
Okay.
net.
Thank you.
That total's less than what's shown there.
Okay. Do you have I don't think you had one in your presentation. I was looking to see if you have a photo from the very top of your client's property, looking sort of towards the back of the existing residence, or maybe towards the southeast, I believe it would be.
Madam, can I
Sure.
share this? This is actually from the existing terrace that's kind of in the middle of the back of the property now, and you can see the view. We actually have a view from our property at grade. The northern neighbor is a good 6 to 8 feet, 4 to 8 feet above us as well.
Okay.
So we will still have that view when our addition's done.
So from this perspective, are you effectively at the highest elevation on
No,
the
there-
parcel, or how much further below it do you
Yeah,
think you
there's probably
are?
still another 2 or 3 feet, because that's kind of mid-lot. I can
Okay.
show you where that is on this site plan.
Chair Miller, Vice Chair Kowalski, if we could lay the photo down on the table so we can just capture it really quickly overhead. Ms. Gu? Thank you.
Is there like an easy way to scan here?
There we go.
Here we go. User error. So, oh, actually, I need to go back. So that's this terrace here. That's kind of taken, you can see that's where it steps off the terrace there to that path to the east. That's kind of standing there. So we have another 1 or 2 feet of contour lines to that back property line.
Okay. And do you have a sense of, I'm trying to understand the view concerns from the uphill neighbor, from Ms. Horniak's property. Do you have a sense of how, what the elevation changes from the top of your client's property to her deck level?
That's what I was saying.
I mean, would you estimate that's
Yeah.
10 feet, 5 feet?
No, it's probably between 4 and 8. You can see in this photo, which is in the set, you can see the chain link fence, which I believe is a 5 feet chain link fence. And so you can see that's kind of buried below that deck there, and the deck's even higher than that fence. So my guess is it's somewhere between 4 and 8 feet above that finished grade at that property line.
Okay, so if we just, for assumptive purposes, said it's 6
Yeah.
feet, then maybe it's 8 feet above the level at which that photo was taken. Does that sound about right?
The chain link fence is actually 4.5 feet, to be exact, at that grade. It's much shorter than the regular fence. The fence to the left of it, it's about 6 feet tall, the wood fence.
That you can see in that photo. But I'm sorry, what was your question again?
This fence here?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense of how far above the level of this grade that deck might be.
Oh, that one is, I can tell you here, actually, you have it on your site plan, don't you? This is a 2, I need to zoom in, I can't read that. Because the main residence is at 95.5, and this is at 103, 104 to the top. It's like a 6-foot difference between our finished floor and that back property line.
Okay. Can you tell us what the plate heights are in the existing residence and the proposed addition, please?
Yeah, I believe the existing residence has a slightly higher than 8-foot plates, which is kind of standard of this kind of era. I think it's like 8.3, 8.4, something like that. And we're proposing 8 for the upper floor.
Okay.
I don't know if we have a section.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, what? Out of memory.
That's how I feel sometimes.
I'll stay right
Out of
there.
memory. Can you point out any trees that are proposed to be removed? I think I saw a couple red X's on the landscape plan, and I'm just trying to understand if those are significant trees or if they're just shrubs or.
Actually, if we go to your site plan, I guess it probably shows, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. Probably be easier to look at the site plan, wouldn't it?
One here is the lemon tree that we're planning to remove, and there's another gum tree in that corner. Let's see, it's the same tree here, which is on the site plan would be. Be this one, that's the gum tree in the backyard. We're trying to open up more views to the ocean from the hot tub. And this lemon tree is the small one that's shown. But since we're removing these two trees, we're adding a taller screening shrub along the property line for the benefit of our lower neighbor. This one here is planted by our owner, which is Palo Verde, and it haven't been doing well in the area because it's coastal and it needs to be more inland and to fit the desert. And this one here, we are keeping it for the privacy.
I think there's another one down here on the west, isn't it?
Yeah, this is also a newly planted tree.
Okay. A question about hot tub equipment and AC compressors, but we can deal with that further down the pike. We don't need to deal with that in conceptual design, I don't think. I guess the last question I would ask is, can you just give us some background in terms of how you arrived at where you've placed the addition, and specifically try to speak to the neighbors' concerns of privacy and views, and if that was taken into consideration, and if it was at all a driver in terms of where you've arrived at in terms of your design?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that. Well, I guess I could have stated that site plan maybe. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you know, we recognize that we're in this kind of hilly neighborhood. We're at one of the high points. And unfortunately, it drops off the most drastic just to our east. You know, the neighbor here to the west is 2-story as well, and we're about the same height. But in terms of kind of trying to keep budget in mind and so forth, and adding just a modest addition with a master bedroom, it made sense to us to keep it towards the back of the main property, without completely disrupting the entire floor plan, because the kitchen and living room and entryway are on that front, comprise the entire front part of that house, and the bedrooms are behind that. So disrupting the bedroom area, which that was the main purpose of the addition anyway, is to try to get that additional third bedroom space. We did take into account, because we've looked at this initially in terms of you know, who's around us and what we're proposing. And as I said, you know, we have a view from this deck, which is even lower than this deck, that kind of hovers over our yard. And the view, even though the mass is here, and she likely sees a view across this roof right now, everything to our east is in a valley. And that picture I think I showed kind of illustrates there's an ocean view all the way, you know, to the east, almost all the way to where our house is. So it is disrupting some view, but there's probably 90% of it still in place.
Please, we don't need any comments from the audience, please.
Okay. Those were my only questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
I just have one question for Holly, because I'm newer in process. The public comment received, when this comes in, does the applicant automatically get it so they're aware
Yes, the applicant is copied on the email correspondence.
Okay, all right, thank you.
That's your only question?
Well, yes, Leslie.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Kelly, do you have any questions, please?
I do. So there's an existing garage at Street View. Just to confirm, is there any change to that garage, such as like the door or the roof, to be more consistent with the proposed project?
There's no proposed changes to the garage. And we lost the site plan somehow.
Uh-oh.
Do you have an image? Let me see. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Where was the adjacent second-story home you were talking about, referring to?
I wasn't there. She was working. Kent is also the client. So to make it confusing. So do you know where you put it?
No. No, the neighbor. Which neighbor has the second story? Because I see it in the.
No, to the left there. You
To
can
the
see it in
left.
that photo.
That's right next door?
Yeah.
Okay. That was my only question. I'll bring it back for comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
Yeah, this is an interesting project. I think the project as proposed, I agree with the applicant in that it's relatively modest. I did drive by this through the neighborhood. I'm familiar with it. Mr. DeRoss's house is over on the corner. It's interesting because when you drive up Carrillo Road, I'm just kind of talking through this for a second. When you drive up Carrillo Road from Milpas, you get a series of houses, one of which one of these speakers has brought us, where you get this sense of there's some smaller Mediterranean, very diminutive houses, and then there's kind of these bigger looming two-story homes. And so from Milpas, driving up that way, I think this is contextual, and I don't really have any issues with it. But when you are to the east and you are kind of sitting in that valley, that low spot on Carrillo Road, you are looking up at your parcel. And so it does tend to somewhat dominate from that perspective. I think the applicant's done a good job of putting the massing towards the rear in order to try to keep the general fabric of the neighborhood as viewed from the street intact. I did drive up onto Medio Road, and I do agree that primary views are probably to the southeast. There may be some impediment, I think, from the proposed second floor if you look more just in a direct south direction, but it seems like you're going to still have a relatively expansive view from in a generally southeast direction. I hear what Mr. Moran is saying about concerns for him being the easterly property owner. Pardon me? He's west? He's your westerly property? So he's the... Oh, he's the two-story. Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. But there are ordinances relative to light and solar access, and it appears that this is only subject to that on the northerly property line. So I don't think that we have any purview over that matter. I do have concerns about the large window on the northerly side of the proposed addition in the stairwell, because I do think that that could cause light pollution and some glare and concern for the northerly neighbor during evening hours. And I would like to see some consideration for the northerly neighbor in that regard. I think those are my initial comments.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
No comments.
Board Member Arkalian, do you have any comments, please?
I do. Okay. So, similar to what Vice Chair Colossus mentioned, I believe the location of the second story is aesthetically appropriate. You know, I'm very focused at looking at this house from street view and how, if we were to go to the roof plan, seeing how the second story is tucked back, I believe that's supportable. Quality architectural materials are used. I appreciate the applicant bringing a material board at concept review. Believe the architectural style is aesthetically appropriate to the neighborhood. So the proposed house is, you know, it's sitting on top of the site, and I'm just thinking in my head, if, let's say that this, you know, the site wasn't an issue and if everything was flat, you know, if I were to look at this project, I believe it conforms to, you know, quite a bit of our guidelines. I'm seeing the issue with hearing the public comment is, you know, it just where it's sitting, you know, it's impacting a lot of the surrounding area. I am in support of Vice Chair Colossus' comments about the window on the north elevation. I'm seeing more of these large glazing areas at stairwells, but I do believe it needs to be reduced to be more respectful to the neighbor. Can we go to the west elevation as well? I believe it's A202B, page 19. If you can remember it, since it was out of memory.
Oh my God, I know, I'd love that. God.
Page 19 of the PDF. So yeah, the window is on, the window I was mentioning about view 1, just the size of that. And then in terms of view 2, I'm looking at the west elevation. You know, I'm seeing the first story and the second story, and how that's just one mass, and the location of the glazings. I believe those can be restudied and maybe have a glazing pattern that is an amassing pattern that may be more compatible with the other elevations. I would consider that. Other than that, just a moment. Yeah, overall, I believe, like as I mentioned about the style, many of the elements on this proposed project are improved, and I appreciate the proposed FAR and the size, bulk, and scale as a big picture. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I don't know if there's a specific ordinance you can speak out regarding public and private views in the purview of the Single Family Design Board. So I know this is a struggle for us as a board, and in particular in this type of a neighborhood where you have sloped homes that were built long time ago, and they're single story. So whenever someone comes before a board for a second story, it's going to impact someone's views. and someone's going to get upset. And I think one of the speakers clearly underscored the value of their property and how it's going to affect their value. The issue, speaking of value of property, is there's an extreme strong pressure because property in this city is so valuable for it to be developed. So, you know, it's kind of the burden on us to make sure how it's developed is under our guidelines, which is an unusual aspect of this city. So I really appreciate the fact that it's Mediterranean Spanish with two-piece mission tile, because that's like the go for this for community, because that's kind of the thing that makes it fun. As far as the second story goes, we really can't deny a client or someone to add a second story. They're in their rights. And we also are really not in a purview to affect private views. However, we do recommend that they be very considerate and thoughtful of their neighbors, and that they get their neighbors' feedback in terms of privacy views. But as far as having a second story, they have every right to build a second story. Also, one of the thoughts that you may have, were you thinking in terms of the second story having a volume ceiling or a flat ceiling? One of the things you can kind of do is have the plate height be like 7'6". So you kind of lower the second floor so it's a little more diminutive. So you more have a little, because that really makes a huge impact in lowering the second story. And I think, okay, I'm going to go on the limb there, but having this, if this is done right, I'm thinking this house as a second story impacting the neighbors behind you would actually add a little more charm to the view. As a, you know, it's the second story house here, as opposed to something with that picture of this big boxy thing, which was really common practice in the 20s, is to build these flat roof things with a parapet, because it was a cost-cutting measure in terms of what they did back then. But you're not using a flat roof, so that's great. And I, you know, echo what the other board members said about that large window. You might want to look at houses of that period and see what they did in that situation. Sort of, you know, create a have that inform you in terms of having that window not be so dominant. I think those are my only comments at this time. They're here for comments only. Can someone entertain a motion? Someone like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion with the following comments, that the project be returned, I don't know, 2 weeks indefinitely? Does the applicant, are we in a
Continue
position? We're still
indefinitely
waiting?
to the full board.
Okay. Indefinitely to the full board for, I guess, conceptual review again. Comments would be that the applicant consider reducing the plate height on the second story addition to 7.5 feet. That the large glazed opening that currently is proposed in the stairwell on the north elevation be restudied in an effort to reduce potential light pollution for the northerly neighbor and to ensure their privacy. And that the applicant study the fenestration on the west elevation in an effort to create more order on the portion of that elevation that is associated with the second floor addition.
Do I have a second?
I second, and I would like to ask for the maker of the motion to consider moving this to the consent calendar.
Can I provide a little context to that as well? I appreciate the suggestion, and I think this would be helpful to know the soonest available next full board hearing as of now is December 5th, so we're quite backed up.
I'm amenable to that, but I'm trying to ensure that the concerned parties are, they continue to be notified. Otherwise, yeah, I'm fine amending the motion so that this returns to consent.
Okay, second.
So, the maker of the motion, could you clarify what you meant regarding the west elevation? You said something about the weird word.
I think Mr. Arakelian had asked that the fenestration on that elevation be restudied, and so I was trying to incorporate his comments in regards to that.
And can you be a little more specific?
I think he's concerned about maybe the one window that looks like it's cutting through the plate height of the first floor.
Yeah, to add just the pattern of the glazing on that elevation compared to the pattern of the glazing on the other elevations, just, it doesn't seem to be consistent.
So would the maker of the motion like the wording to be to study the consistency of the pattern of the windows on the west elevation to match more closely with the other elevations?
That's fine with me.
Okay, does that sound good?
That's fine.
All right, thank you. Can you read the motion again so I can hear what it says?
Continued indefinitely for concept review. Consider reducing plate height on the second-story addition to 7.5 feet. Restudy the north elevation consistency of the pattern of the glazing of the windows to minimize privacy impacts to adjacent neighbors.
That was the west elevation, sorry.
Sorry, elevation to minimize impacts to adjacent neighbors. And then study the north elevation to create more, I didn't catch that last part.
Can I clarify?
Sure.
Ms.
Please.
Gu? Okay, so number one, I believe was correct. Consider
Yes.
reducing the second story plate height to 7 to 7.5 feet. 2, restudy the large glazing element to ensure privacy for the northerly neighbor. 3, study the fenestration on the west elevation to create more order by studying the pattern of the glazing to be more closely matched to the other elevations. Is that, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I had the motion seconded, is that correct? You seconded?
I made the motion.
Do I have a second?
A second.
So are we clear we're going to consent? Was that an agreed upon? Okay, can I have a roll call, please? With the concern that the neighbors get properly notified.
Okay, all right, here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Collas,
Yes.
Board Member Arneson,
Yes.
Board Member Arkelian.
Yes.
The motion passes, thank you.
All right. Thank you
Chair
very much.
Miller, I just have a note to those who provided a speaker slip for this item. We can double check your speaker slips, but there's a box on the bottom that says that you want to be included as an interested party, so that way you're notified every time the project's scheduled for a future agenda.
So I'm going to give the board a 5-minute break. So let's be back here at 5:40. Thank you very much. Design Board. We're on item number 4. This is a new item for concept review only. It's 2108 Gibraltar Road. Proposal to construct a new 3-story, 4,709 square foot single unit residence with an attached 509 square foot 2-car garage on a vacant lot located on the Hillside Design District. The project includes covered and uncovered balconies, decks and patios, a motor court, infinity pool, and pool terrace, new driveway and driveway gate, and hardscape and landscape improvements. The proposed total of 5,218 square feet on a 98,213 square foot lot is 92% of the maximum guideline floor-to-lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings and Hillside Design District and slope lot findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. So welcome, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and show us your project.
Chair Miller, applicant, sorry to interrupt. I need to make a note about the project description.
Yeah.
So for future project descriptions and agendas, we will be including this language, but as currently designed, this project requires 2 minor zoning exceptions.
Okay.
So just take to consider that when reviewing the project and making comments later. The first is required to allow the trash enclosure to be located within the front yard. And the second minor zoning exception is for the height of the driveway gate to be proposed at 6 feet, which exceeds the max height limit of 42 inches, to be located within the first 10 feet of the property line. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, you have the floor.
Hi, I'm Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect, and with me is the project manager from our office, Phaedra Gage.
All right, welcome.
And so I'm going to start out with some photos, if we can pull those up. Are they in this?
If you look up on the
Yeah, there we go. So this, how many of you drove by? Okay, so for those of you that didn't, this is a unique property that is right on the corner of what is it again? Yeah, El Cielito and Gibraltar. And you come to the intersection, and this project is below Gibraltar Road, and then and above Mountain Drive. So it's on a really steep slope. There's Gibraltar Road in that lower photo off to the right. And then the property is down below, and it's been abandoned for 10 years or more. I was the original architect back in 2008, and the project got a permit, was under construction, and got abandoned in 2011. But the caissons in the center portion of the property and all of the grading has been done. So you can see that that's the basement level, what we call the basement level, which is what makes it a 3-story. It's one room. The house is, the property is so steep that to terrace this house down the hill, and you'll see it when we look at the elevations, is required. And the only place you can really see this house is across the canyon. There's about 10, well, there's a lot more, but there's probably, you can see it through there, 15, 20 houses scattered across the canyon. And then you can't see it as you drive up Gibraltar Road, one, because you're paying attention of the road, and then the other reason is that it's just blocked by foliage, and you can't see it from El Cielito either, but you do see the driveway, and then you really don't see anything else because of the foliage. So it's unique in that what we were trying to do from the very beginning, the gentleman that purchased the property, we had Greg Van Sant up there, our structural engineer, and he said all the caissons that were installed and the foundation that was installed and the existing walls were going to be usable. And so, and because if we'd torn them out, we would have probably put them back in the same place anyway, because it's just best for this steep slope to design a house in that way. The existing driveway is not going to be removed. That is the only location that you're looking at right there for a driveway on this property. We don't have any intention of changing it, but we are going to have to rebuild those walls a little bit. I think there's some issues with the walls. Which is also why we're asking for an MZE for an over-height gate, because you can't really, there's no impact to traffic and the gate's 20 feet back. And we just feel that anybody coming up to this intersection, looking down on the property is, it just provides just a little bit of privacy for the motor court. I'll get to the other MZE when we start. This is a view, Phaedra, stop it just a second. That's the lot right now. It's already graded, which is why you'll see our grading numbers are so low, because what we've tried to do is design a house that is, you know, utilizing the existing grading. And like I said before, this house really just wants to be in this location. This is a T-Fire rebuild. In 2008, it was a T-Fire rebuild. And the house was bigger, and I brought the plans in case anybody wanted to see them. But what we've tried to do is, we've been working on this project for over a year, and initially it was bigger. We were 100% FAR, and then we went and we told the owner, we said, you know, we're not really comfortable going to SFDB if you're not comfortable paying for what this house is going to cost. So we asked him if we could go through a ROM price exercise, and that took a month and a half or so, but it came back with him agreeing to have us reduce the size. So we reduced the size to 92, but if you take out that basement level, it's actually 82%. And so that's why it took us so long to come back to you guys. We were scheduled on a couple of agendas earlier in the year, even the end of last year, and 2 of them were postponed because of lack of quorum, and then one of them was, I think, because of us not being ready with our redesign, which also was waiting for the survey so that we could verify our wall height. So we didn't want to come back to you unless we knew the exact wall heights of the lower level. So now let's go to the site plan on the, so you can see how steep the site is. The dark gray is the building coverage, the light gray is the pool and the balconies and the decks. And you can see the motor court down, kind of nestled in there. And by the way, the previous permanent plans had the pool below the house, which made it a trek to get down to the pool from the main level of the house. And there's also really no, I think I mentioned this before, but there's really no other place for the elevations, like the finished floor elevations, because of what we're dealing with the existing motor court. But we did have an opportunity to move the pool up higher, and we softened the pool walls with terracing. And what we decided to do is let's go straight to the renderings, because I think that they are the best visual on how this property looks. So the lower left is the courtyard, is the elevation of the front of the house from the courtyard. That's a steel, it's very traditional Spanish colonial revival with steel front door, fixed side lights, punctuations of smaller windows facing the front motor court, which is very standard, but just to get some light in to the left of the front door, we have, that's a gallery that has some steel windows and shutters also to just get some light in there. Then the upper left image is the view from the street at the gate, and then looking down at, that blue is obviously not ocean. We didn't have time to put the background of the mountains back there, but we don't have that great a view of the ocean. But it is a pretty fantastic view. And now you can see that the pool is off of the living room level. Then coming around to the lower right is the infinity edge of the pool, and we've tucked the pool equipment down underneath that into the stone walls. And then you can see from that lower right image that we've decided that, I said, I wonder what Knapp's Castle used to look like. And
Rebuilt, by the way.
is it?
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, and we looked at old photos of Nab's Castle, and it had kind of an off-white plaster over the stone base, and it was the original concept back in 2008 of the architecture anyway, and we thought it was an excellent way to soften the lower level, and you can see how it comes forward and creates a terrace on that middle level is a master suite. It creates a covered terrace on that master suite, yeah, and then in the middle level. And then the upper level, it creates a roof for the living room to actually have a terrace. But everything steps back. So this is a good example of showing how the property kind of steps back up. And we had to do it anyway because we had to meet the 30-foot height limit. We've softened the terraces with trellises in some instances, and then, as I mentioned before, the middle level is providing the basis for the floor of the terraces above. And now this image on the lower left is the view from, if you were standing at the bottom portion of the property looking up, but not from Mountain Drive. You can't really see it from Mountain Drive. And then that, you can see the whole lower level is that sandstone base. And then when you get over to the northeast volume, which is the garage, and we have a bedroom suite above that, because it balances the house. But it was tricky. I think we had to lower the plate to 762 in that area because we were close to our 30 feet. But that's also connected to the main house via a stairwell, if you wanted to see it on the floor plans. But we don't have a landscape plan yet because we're coming to you with a concept review just to get a feel for the supportability and to make sure we were going in the right directions. We have responded to our initial feedback letter, and it's been submitted, but they allowed us to come on the agenda because we addressed all the comments in the initial feedback letter, even though staff still has to review those. Let's see, I'm trying to keep it short. What am I missing? What else did I want to say?
So when we went through the exercise of getting the ROM pricing for this project and kind of reducing the square footage where we could, we did also eliminate a lot of large stepping terraces and stairways that were going back around this side of the building, just to kind of soften the house into the existing hillside. Even around the front side here, we did eliminate some things from our original first round of design.
And I will say one thing, the room above the garage, when we reduced the house, we didn't want to eliminate the number of bedrooms, so there is a bedroom suite above the garage, and it also has fantastic views that kind of overlook that. That was one thing that we did. Because basically what we did when we value engineered the square footage is we pulled it in from both sides. There wasn't anything we could really do or that we really wanted to do with the motor court elevation and the downhill elevation, but we saw an opportunity to bring it in on the sides and kind of reduce all of, like Phaedra said, all of the extra decks that we thought maybe weren't even going to be used that much. And it's a lot of money, all that stonework and all that extra deck square footage. It also eliminated our amount of impervious surfaces, and the whole motor court's going to be pavers, and so is the pool area, and this is obviously a SWIMP Tier 3 project, and
so this is the location of the trash enclosure. I'll just go back to the site plan. So this really is the only logical place for the trash enclosure due to the hillside coming down really steep on this corner, and also not wanting to locate it over near the pool. And as Dawn mentioned, the motor court and pool terrace, we're proposing to do permeable pavers, which we have image of an
Oh, yeah, we should
inspirational
run
photo
through the-
here.
Let's
This
run
one
through
here?
the inspirational photos. And then, didn't we had, yeah, let's go.
Oh, the inspirational.
Yeah, then those. So this is, our concept is kind of Spanish hill town design with stone base, plaster above it, and that's Knapp's Castle, actually, on the upper right. And that's Knapp's Castle on the lower left. Isn't it? No, that's not it. But it looked kind of like that. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You're right, it is. And then, so that's kind of, yeah, that's kind of our inspiration. And then these are all more inspirations for the feel of the exposed wooden rafter tails, but this is high fire, so it has to be plastered eaves. Heavy timber trellis, open trellises on the upper level, and we want to partially vault the interior, and you can see all very traditional kind of materiality. And that concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Did we get any public input?
Good. Can you please switch to my screen? Okay, opening virtual public comment. If you are attending on Zoom and would like to make oral public comment, you can do so by clicking on the raise your hand icon. When staff calls upon you, we will please unmute yourself. And in the meantime, it will give those in person, if there are any attendees in person wishing to make public comment, please fill out a speaker slip and bring it up to us. And Chair Miller, board members, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item. Ms. Gu, do we have any hands raised in Zoom?
Having checked Zoom, I do not see any raised hands at this time.
Okay, we will close virtual public comment, and I'm not seeing anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item, so public comment is closed. Back to you, Chair Miller.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Colas, do you have any questions, please?
Very few. Are you removing any trees?
No, there aren't any.
Yeah, it's pretty
We're
sparse.
adding a bunch.
Yeah, it's pretty sparse, okay. And then I'm just trying to understand the relationship of the pool level to the home. So you're saying the pool level is on, you enter on the living spaces level, or maybe you could just walk me through the level, the two upper levels?
Yeah, just zoom in on the site plan because it shows, so the balcony, we walk into the main living room, and the central rectangular portion in front is that living room right there. And then there's a large opening off to that south balcony. And then you walk down the arcade of trellis to the pool terrace. So at least the pool, you can see it from the living room, and you get a sense of the water, even though it has its own terrace. And that's why it's all at the same level. Then in between that trellis and the pool are stairs that go down to the lower level.
Okay, so the pool level is sort of on a split level relative to the understory and the main level.
The top of the water is pretty much at the main
Pool
level.
terrace level.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Can we see the elevation? I guess it would be the easterly elevation? Okay. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, I didn't have a chance to drive by. And so I believe, I just pulled it up, Google Earth on my phone, but neighborhood compatibility, I mean, can you talk to existing residences in that same area?
Yeah, there's lots of Spanish Mediterranean homes scattered all throughout that canyon, and they're not all Spanish Mediterranean, I don't think, but from a distance, they all just kind of look like this.
Right,
It's a
right,
house on a
work
hill.
together,
and
right. So it's very spread out, and the lot is
Yeah.
super large at 98,000 square feet, okay. And then it looks like, I think, 10-foot plate heights.
For the most part, yeah.
On the upper level only, right?
I believe the basement is 10 feet.
Because that's existing, because we're dealing with an existing grade beam that's already been built that supports the whole middle level, but nothing higher than the middle level has been built yet. So
I believe 10-foot plates, maybe 9.
I think we have a 9 in the middle, don't we?
92.
I can't remember.
11. I think it's 10.
Is it 10? The owner wanted 10, I know. That's why we don't have a fully vaulted ceiling, we just want a little, we're just going for kind of a partial vault and on the inside. The doors are 8. I think the doors are all drawn at 8. Yeah.
Other than the area above the garage, those plate heights are lower
Oh, yeah.
over here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Eric Kaling, do you have any questions, please?
I just want to apologize. Can you, could you repeat the plate heights per floor? The 10-foot on basement?
Let's see, let's go back to not the garage area. So 870, 81,
This is a 10-foot plate
70
from basement to lower. And then
basement finish, but 70, 81, yeah, that's 10 feet, because that's the existing one. And then we've got 81 to 92.
which includes the floor
Which
framing
includes the
thickness.
floor framing.
So that's a 10-foot plate
That's
from
10,
lower to
yeah.
main. This one might be 9,
That's 9.
I believe.
That's 9 on the upper level.
And then this front part of the structure with the hip roof has a lower plate height.
The living room, that's the living room.
Is that the same for the, above the garage?
No, it's lower because we were up against our 30-foot height limit, so that upper level plate is a lot less.
7.6 plate height from at the upper level above the garage.
10-foot garage? Is that a 10-foot garage height? Right? Just want to confirm.
9-foot garage plate height.
9 foot, okay. That's all I have for now, thanks.
I have a question about the garage door. Did you think about making it 2 doors rather than that one big opening? What was your approach with that?
But
Thoughts with that?
if you look at the site plan and the vehicular maneuvering, it's really tricky because there's not a lot of area to back up and turn around.
So that's kind of
And
like,
so go back to the site plan, Phaedra. And it's always been that way. And in fact, when we redesigned it to come back to, the second design, we pushed the whole house 2 feet back to give us 2 more feet in the motor court. And then it also provided us a way to get planting for softening the front elevation. So
So you thought of that, because it kind of looks like you, but yeah, I got it. Okay, that was my only question, so.
Chair Miller?
Yeah.
I have one more question to ask.
Yes, sir, of
Could we
course.
go to the east elevation again? Page 8. Thanks. So I'm looking at the roof forms on, view, view 1. Have any other roof forms been considered? I just kind of want to learn more about how you arrived at this roof form for the, the gable style with these minor roof forms, yeah?
yeah, a lot of thought and deliberation went into this. If you do a gable roof facing east on the upper level, it just looks too big and out of proportion. And making that a hip roof and lowering it just gives it a little more human scale from that terrace level. And it minimizes the amount of white wall that faces the canyon. And then it allowed us to kind of create an eave around the whole house, but then you can see that the one main gable running all the way through, south to north, then we just decided it was a nice element to bring the gable in because it also matched the entryway gable. And the combination of hips and gables is what we were going for. But we must have designed that center living room element 10 times just to get the proportion of balcony to arched opening to just the proportions of plaster versus glazing, and then where to put shutters, and we thought about it a lot. Yeah.
That's all I have, thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'll bring it back for comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
Yeah, I think it's a good project. I think for the most part, all you're going to see are the roofs as you're driving by, frankly. Maybe a little glare off the pool. I really like the idea of trying to have this look a little bit more vernacular and grow out of the hillside. I think the degree to which you can really work the detailing to make it feel that way is going to be important to how well it sort of comes off, so to speak. Might want to consider sort of varying the way that you deal with the arches on that middle level, like maybe the central thing wants to be something, and I'm just thinking some more eclectic detailing on it might make that really read, or maybe some baffled walls, maybe more battered walls on the plinth where you're dealing with the sandstone. It might make it feel a little bit more traditional hillside. But generally, I think that I really like the stone fireplaces as you're reflecting, or the chimney caps as you're reflecting them in the drawings. I think it's going to be a successful project, and I can support both of the minor zoning exceptions being requested given the nature of the parcel, and the increased FAR. I think that this is, unlike some of the projects that we saw earlier today that are, truly in a more, that are in more of a rural, in an urban condition, this is just much more of a bucolic property, and it has a lot more space around it that can take this much FAR. So I can support the project as designed.
Great, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Thank you. Great submittal. Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with Leslie's comments. I believe the FAR is definitely supportable with the size of the lot for sure. So that would be my main concern. So no further comments. Thank you.
Board Member Arkell, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So it's a challenging site, and I believe the structure, the placement of the project is aesthetically appropriate. Just a moment here. Okay, so the east elevation, I believe it's the quality architectural materials are being used. I believe the architectural style is very, a lot of great elements. I saw the details of the rafter tails on that other sheet. Believe there's a lot of good choices made. I'm looking at the glazing on the top floor, the 22, the sliding, the sliders. Can we zoom in a little bit? So I'm in support of all the glazing and most of the glazing in the other parts of the project. This 22-foot slider, I know that's a feature door. I'm curious what other board members have to say about possibly breaking it up. I know the intention of this door for the view, but in terms of compatibility, it just kind of sticks out from with a hair compared to the other glazings, and I would maybe consider a different style. And then if we go to the front of the house, the glazing near the entry door to the right, the fixed, would
They're supposed to be grids.
grids,
in
yeah.
there. Are they, what happened to those? Yeah.
There should be
It's supposed to be a steel grid window,
Okay.
fixed.
Right, so, yeah, I was just
don't
gonna
like
say that, yeah, adding grids to that,
You don't like that window?
just for consistency, yeah. And if we can go to page 10 of the PDF. So, yeah, I'm looking at the site sections. I appreciate how you've done your best to not create a lot of horizontal run and cutting into the hillside as shown here. And I'm per our guidelines, and I'm looking at, I was trying to better assess apparent height, and I do appreciate all the 3D renderings that you provided, looking from the bottom, looking up, and I feel like you've studied this well, and believe that apparent height is aesthetically is supportable. Yeah, seeing a landscape plan would be helpful, seeing what plantings and the trees, and I know it's concept, but yeah, we're curious to see what that's going to look like. That's all I have for now, but thank you. Oh, the zoning exceptions. I'm in support of the trash enclosure. Believe that's aesthetically, I mean, there's limited space, so I would be in support of that exception. And the height of the gate at 6 feet instead of 42 inches. Could we go back to the, I think there was a page that showed the proposed gate.
Shows up on the rendering, maybe.
Please. Can we zoom in?
It's a solid vertical wood plank gate. Oh, it looks horizontal there. TBD.
Yeah, I would be in support of the 6 foot height, but I would ask the applicant to provide additional detailing of what that's going to look like next time to make sure it's compatible with the rest of the house. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. Good job. I have no comment. I think it's a great project. So who would
You
like to
don't
make a
have any
motion?
comments?
Nope.
Oh my goodness, that was like my dream. I didn't want to tell you guys. I didn't want to tell you the other part of my dream, but the other part of it was that you loved it.
Sherry's going to go
I think
party
it's great.
now.
I love it.
Okay, I will make a motion that this project, well, what can I do right now? Because we're in limbo land, so why don't we clarify that with staff before I open my mouth?
Thank you, Vice Chair Klas. This project is still under planning 30-day review, so you're welcome to include in your comments that the board finds the project would be ready for project design approval or something along those lines. I mean, you're also welcome to consider the consent calendar.
So I would like to make a motion that this project be continued, it's getting late, that this project be continued for conceptual review on consent calendar, and that with the following comments, that I think the board generally feels that the project is representative of a project that meets Hillside Design Guidelines, that we would be in support of both of the minor zoning exceptions that are being requested, but that additional detailing be provided in terms of the gate design, that we would like the applicant to consider that the applicant study the third floor easterly bank of glazing at the central element to see if they can resolve that in a manner more consistent with the style of the residence. That some variation in the nature of the detailing, the plaster details between the columns and the structure for the covered outdoor areas on the east elevation be pursued, and that the applicant consider battering some of the stone walls at the plinth or at the base of the residence. It's the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. May I have a roll call, please? Unless you want to hear the motion again.
Please.
Would you like to hear it again?
Yes.
Kathy, do you have it or you want me to do it?
In general, the board finds the proposed project meets the hillside design findings. The board would like the applicant to provide additional details on the gate design. Study the third floor easterly bank of the glazing in the central element to match the style of the residence. Some variation of the plaster details between the outdoor door areas needs to be studied. Consider battering some, is it battery? Battering. Some of the plinth walls at the base is what I have.
So I have a question. What do you mean by battering? What is that?
Angled.
Yeah.
Like, they're bigger at the bottom, and then they come
Got
out.
it.
Okay.
Got it.
And to include also, number 2 was the board is in support of the minor zoning exceptions and to provide gate design details.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds right. I'd like to add one thing to my motion,
Uh-oh, okay.
that you also return with a landscape plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that acceptable to the seconder?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Claus,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
and Board Member Arkelian.
Yes.
And motion passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're on to our final project. We're at item 5. This is a new item, concept review. Address is 3208 Laurel Canyon Road. Proposal for an addition to an existing one-story, 1,288 square foot single-unit residence comprised of a 207 square foot first floor addition and a 603 square foot second story addition. The project also includes an interior remodel, a new 200 square foot carport, a 247 square foot garage, a 345 square foot patio covered patio, a 134 square foot second story deck, removal of the existing concrete driveway, and replacement with permeable paver system, and associate mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades. The proposed total of 2,545 square feet on a 6,970 square foot lot is approximately 87% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. No final appealable decision will take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings will be required when the project is reviewed for project design approval. Thank you. If you'd introduce yourself and present your project.
Chair Miller, just one moment. Sorry for interrupting. The applicant would like to request the board's consideration in waiving the FAR supplemental requirements due to the FAR of 87% being required. So something to consider when reviewing the project and then making your comments later.
Okay, thank you.
All right, hi. My name is Joe Stewart, Studio 4 Design Group. She explained that pretty well. I think I can go through this relatively quickly. It's a small family that's quickly growing, so they wanted to expand their house. As you can see, it's a tiny little house with single-car garage, 2-bedroom, And then this is a big volume which will come in as a critical element here in a minute. So existing driveway is going to be removed, that's concrete. So we will have permeable paving here. There's a whole bunch of, there's a, excuse me. There's a covered patio back here that's in the setback that's going to be removed. Also a bunch of concrete back here as a patio that's going to be removed. As you can see, there's going to be this area here. There's an addition above the garage, which is an office extra bedroom, so that they will end up with a 4th bedroom when people come to visit. And all of the other work is going to be over this area here. So we are trying not to touch this space here, and I will show you why if I can get to these photos. This is the interior of that space, and so we really don't want to compromise that. So that's what's kind of driving the location of that addition, which will seem kind of like I'm separating it from the building, which is this here. So it's all of this above here that we're adding on. So this is the office guest bedroom that's above the garage. And it's tucked back a little bit from the face of the garage, so we're kind of stepping it back from the street. Laurel Canyon's up here. And most of the project is in the back of the house here. And it's just a master suite. This is looking from the back of the house. So this is that staircase kind of going up and the laundry room at the bottom. This is that covered patio area beneath the master suite. This is the master suite. And this is on the front side of the house back here. This is that office guest room. This is the existing house. You can see this is the existing elevation here. So this is from the front. This is from Laurel Canyon. So this is that addition up here on the front with the deck on the front to kind of set this back. This is right in plane with the front of the garage. There is a carport, covered carport here that we are adding for extra parking. We are changing the entrance up here. We have a little pop out at the front. And this is the massing in the back. So that's the back of that master suite. This is, again, the existing front elevation. This is then looking from the west. So this is, again, that addition at the front. This is the existing garage. We're just adding some elements out here just to make that elevation a little more interesting. And then you can see the massing here for the second story. And this is the entrance into the laundry room set back on the other side of the building. And then this is looking from the east elevation. And again, you can see we got the staircase coming down here towards the front door, the door into the garage. This is that office space / extra bedroom and master suite. And the whole part of this hillside steps up the street as you come away from Foothill. So all of these homes were kind of terraced up as you go. So I put in here the finished floor and plates of the adjacent structure next to the bedroom here. I did go to 7'6" plate so that we could kind of scrunch this down as much as we could. And this is a closet and the master bath, so that works out pretty well without making it uncomfortable. And they still get a nice little vaulted space in the middle. This is that covered space underneath the master suite. And then as you can see, this is the neighbor to the east, so that's the one that's up the hill. This is looking from the top of their roof out, so you can see that they're not really going to be looking into anybody's backyard. This is a garage, and the yard is back here. And then this same thing, it's over here. You can just see what the house looks like there. This is the neighbor to the west, so the downhill side. This is directly across the street, and then as you go up the street this way, all the homes drop into the canyon, so they start becoming below the street level. So they drive down so that they wouldn't really be affected by any view interruptions. And this is just up the street. So you can see that and this is not the only one, but you can see it's compatible with the existing neighborhood. So it's a mixture of single and two-story homes. So I think, oh, so we're changing the siding and the windows throughout. I guess you probably want to know that as well. So currently it's this horizontal siding. It's like a shingle siding. If you look at the pictures here, you can see here, it's kind of like a shingle, but it reads horizontal. And we are going to board and batten. And that's going to be, it's a cementitious material, but it's not hardy. It's got of course this is an opinion, but it's got a better texture than hardy plank. So that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Did we get any public comment, please?
Ms. Gu, can you please switch to my screen? Thank you. Okay, opening virtual public comment. So for those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment, please select the raise your hand icon. When staff calls on you, please unmute yourself. And while we're waiting on those on Zoom, board members and Chair Miller, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item. And seeing as though we have no one in the audience, public comment is closed for in-audience. So Ms. Gu, is there anyone raised hands on Zoom?
Reviewing Zoom, you do not see any raised hands, so we can go ahead and close public comment for this item.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair Miller.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any questions, please?
Thank you for providing a site section that shows the profile of the neighbors. It's really appreciated. Do I have any questions? Could we go to I'm looking for the other exterior elevations. I don't know what sheet it is. Maybe you could scroll through the alternate exterior elevations.
Okay, so there's the first one, and that is the, oops, sorry, that's the rear. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to look at
Yeah, I think it's, if you can scroll 2 more sheets maybe,
that? Okay, front,
this elevation.
okay.
So I can appreciate your desire to keep that beautiful living room in its pristine state, and why you've worked around that. I'm trying to figure out if you tried to, I'm not on, sorry. I'll repeat myself. I can appreciate why you're working around that central volume, because it's beautiful, and I understand why you want to keep that, and the owners want to keep it. I'm struggling with sort of that versus the tall on either side of it, and I'm wondering if you considered any other approaches, maybe to roof lines, for lack of a way of putting it, in order to try to soften that step in massing.
Yes, so. Yes. So if let's see, if we look at the floor plan. So I was going to try to run the gable the other way. And what you end up, my biggest concern was the neighbor to the east. And so if I ran a gable on that end, it's going to end up feeling taller because that gable is going to be right on their property line. So, I mean, I did try to kind of mess around with it, yeah.
Okay. And then a question for staff. So we have a bedroom and a bathroom that's not connected with an interior connection. I'm just trying to understand how that's being processed. Is that being recognized as an accessory structure, or?
Yeah, Chair Miller, through you to Vice Chair Kalas, this project is still under 30-day planning review, and I know that's something the zoning plan checker will review. I thought I had the letter here that may speak to it, so let me look for just a moment.
Those are my only questions, so maybe we can go on to the next board.
Just
member.
one thing on that, if I could, can I?
Sure.
Okay. So being as it has that single car garage, because we really wanted to have that interior access to that space. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out a way of doing that without losing that one bedroom that's nested right there. If you look at
Okay.
that, I mean, everything's really tight, because we were gonna throw it right up in that hallway, but as soon as you do that. So I did look at that.
Okay.
And I knew this question was gonna come up.
Okay.
Chair Miller, Vice Chair Kawas, I had a different project letter, apologies, so it's something I'll have to check into.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Anderson, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, I'm just trying to understand the neighborhood compatibility a little bit better, site plan, and I know, do you have any further exterior photos that would show, you know, more than just the east and the west neighbors?
Oh, I did have the one that was up the street, that was that two-story, and there are some other ones, and I did, because planning brought it up, Holly brought it up, that I should get more pictures. So I do have more pictures on my phone, I just haven't put them in presentation yet. But this is kind of typical for the two-story, is they're pretty big. I mean, I was actually kind of surprised that I got to 87 with what we did. So I have no idea what this one would have been.
Okay, thank you. And then also exterior materials. You talked a little bit about the siding. Any further roofing? I don't believe you have a materials board. Did I miss that?
I do not have a material board, but it is called out on the drawings, and it's a standing seam, metal roof, so probably 12-inch seam spacing. And as I said, the siding is a board and batten, and it's a cementitious
Right.
board.
Okay, and windows and doors?
We are looking at, they're going to be probably a narrow rail aluminum clad, dark.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Arkalian, do you have any questions, please?
Any proposed landscaping, screening, anything going on, or no change to plantings?
Yeah, there's no change, but this, I went out and even measured this shrub. So, I mean, this is true to what's actually there. And this is between those two. There's really nothing here except for the fence between these two. I mean, there's some planting over here, but I wasn't about to go into their yard and measure those. But it's, on the backside, we're not proposing anything other than what you see essentially in this, minus this cover that's gonna go away. But honestly, this steps down as well, so there's really there's not much of a need for screening at this time, it doesn't feel like. I mean, that's the finished floor where this picture is taken from, essentially.
That's all I have, thanks.
What's the company name that's doing the Board Bad siding? Do you have any, do you have color sample of it?
Something, I didn't bring one with me, but it's,
What color? What color was the
it's gonna be a gray.
gray?
We haven't really settled on exactly what that's gonna be. It's probably going to be on the lighter range of gray.
Okay. And what color was the standing metal seam roof going to be? You haven't determined it? And the windows were going to be a dark bronze?
Yeah.
Narrow? Because this one, you have divider lights on them. They look like a traditional type window? Is that what you're thinking?
We're still working on that, but, it's gonna be more of a modern look.
That's what I'm thinking. It sounds, because you've got cable railings as well? And then,
Oh, no, sorry, there's no cable railing, it's wood railing.
that's wood railing.
thinking of a-
Horizontal wood railing?
It'll probably end up being aluminum or something along those lines.
I'm confused. It's horizontal, what?
It will probably end up, because of the high fire, I think.
Oh, the railings will be aluminum,
Yeah,
but they'll look like wood.
yes. Well, it won't look like wood, they'll just be narrow. It'll look like a 2x2 or 1x1 rail.
Oh, got it, okay. Okay, though, I think those are my only questions. And that's brick? Brick faced?
It is,
Oh,
yes.
so it's like a red brick?
That's gonna be like a light, almost like a whitewashed brick.
Okay.
I will come back next time with all of
So you have you have divider lights in all the windows on the elevation, but you're saying that's probably not going to happen?
No, that will happen.
It will look like that?
Yeah.
So it's a very traditional look?
Yeah, but they will be more modern, narrow styles and rails.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I think those are my only questions. I'll bring it back to comments. Vice Chair Kalas, do you have any comments, please?
Yeah, the drawings are nicely completed, and the site section was really helpful, like I mentioned. I do think we need more photographs and more neighborhood context in order to understand how this is going to fit into the neighborhood. I am struggling with what feels, for lack of a more delicate way of saying it, sort of a disjointed condition between the masses that are being proposed. Typically we would kind of imagine that the bulk of the massing would be sort of at the center, and then it would kind of fall away, or there would be these smaller diminutive pieces surrounding it. And I understand what's driving that, but I feel like there needs to be more effort made in order to join these elements together. And I don't know if that can be done with some shed roofs, with some extended trellises that maybe help to bridge the elements together visually. Maybe California roofing over the top of that middle area in order to have it die into one of the walls of the two-story elements. I feel like that needs to be studied more. And then a landscape plan would be helpful also going forward.
All right, thank you. Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments, please?
Yes, I agree with Leslie's comments. I think if you could come, my concern is mostly in the front bedroom above the single garage, and how that fits in with, the adjoining neighbors in the neighborhood. So a rendering or more, photographs of how that fits in, and is compatible, throughout the entire design. Same thing. And then, we need all your exterior materials and colors and finish board, or however you want to include it. Thank you.
All right, Board Member Arkalian, do you have any comments, please?
I do. So I want to appreciate you measuring the hedge, including that on plan. That was just those little things go a long way. I do like on your plans, it was just very nice to see before and after elevation on each side. That just helps me better understand the project. So I appreciate that. I'm really struggling with the what Vice Chair Kalas said about the two-story elements, one on the front and then there's another one in the back. I think a 3D rendering would be helpful for me on the from the corners of maybe a corner from the front and a corner from the back, to see how that comes together. But before this meeting, I went through our two-story guidelines and tried to see, are there any examples of this that because I did see that central part that you're trying to preserve, and trying to see how can this be workable, and I understand the needs of a growing family, et cetera. But I think a 3D rendering would be helpful. I'm just really not sure about going forward with, one coming up here and one coming up there. If there's some kind of element that you can study in connecting it together, or, I'm trying not to say compromise that central element, but yeah, I'm similar to what is in our guidelines, and Vice Chair Colossus comments, I'm just used to seeing it in the center versus, I'm seeing this from here where you're putting two-story elements along the 6-foot setback on each side. And it just, to me, that just does not seem appropriate. I did drive by this house, and I don't really see anything similar to this. And so, yeah, I think it needs additional review in that regard. That's all my comments. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I'm a little, I think if you go tend more to the traditional as opposed to the modern, you'll have a little more success. I'm afraid, I know you want to make it a little more contemporary, but I think, because if it's an unusual house, I can see it as board and bat country cottage, like a multi-generational home that was built in the early 1900s, because you've got these strange two things, which is kind of what you saw. So if you go into the modern, it's going to look weird, and probably in 5 years, it's not going to age well. So I'm thinking if you go traditional, it'll give it a little more sustainable life. I like the side lights. I like the dividers in the windows. And in the brick, I'd do red brick. I know that's, and you're also putting in a standing metal seam roof, which can be, they did that, so that could work in there too. So I'm just think if you just kind of make it folksy and charming, that'll help you with the unusual thing you're doing, as opposed to trying to make it modern.
Okay.
Those are my comments. So, with that being said, and he's here for comments only. Would someone like to entertain a motion?
Yes, and just as a reminder regarding the FAR supplementals, please weigh in on those.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
Okay, so the project as designed is approximately 87% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio.
Yeah.
So when we get over the 85% required, we have these FAR supplemental documents
Okay.
that the board at their discretion can request, and I can pull them up if that's helpful, if you want to pick and choose or just choose to waive them all.
I'll leave that up to whoever makes the motion.
I would like to make a motion, but I first wanted to hear what the board thought of that, the 87% maximum required FAR.
I can waive those. I think we're close enough to it.
I agree.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion for this project to return to the full board indefinitely with the following comments. For the applicant to provide additional neighborhood context and photos of the immediate neighborhood. For the applicant to consider traditional architectural elements along the exterior elevations or traditional architectural detailing.
Either one works. It's fine.
Okay. For the applicant to restudy the proposed two-story elements to either make them more connected or to possibly consider a different location. For the applicant to provide a material and color board throughout. For the applicant to provide a 3D rendering, a minimum of one from street view at a corner of the parcel and one from the rear of the property, corner of the rear of the property. And for the applicant to provide a landscape plan. That's all I have for now.
Do I have a second?
Yes, did we get the materials?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, may I have a roll call, please?
Here we go. Chair Miller,
Yes.
okay. Vice Chair Klaus,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Kim.
Yes.
And the motion passes. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. And I know.
Chair Miller, if you could please adjourn the
I'd like to
meeting.
conclude the Single Family Design Board for October 10th, 2022. Thank you very much.